Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, Fairfield Plan, Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting, Tuesday, August 4th. Do a roll call.
I think what you can do is indicate that we have two commissioners absent and then designate the two alternates acting in their place.
Okay, so we have two commissioners absent, and the two acting in their place, Commissioners Zablak, and
Huntley?
Huntley. Okay, I wasn't sure who else was up there. Okay, cool. All right. So tonight is a planning session for the members of the public attending. We're just going to be discussing the planning issues listed on the planning and zoning agenda. I guess we have bills and communications to address first. We've got meeting minutes 7/28/2006. Do we have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? Any questions or comments on the
I have not seen, are these the minutes for last week?
28th? They're posted online.
I would suggest we approve them during our regular meeting. I've not had a chance to look at the minutes yet.
They're posted as they normally are, so perhaps you could look at them right now.
I'll just abstain.
Any other questions or amendments to the minutes? Right, so should we put this to, go ahead, Commissioner Monahan.
It's a planning meeting. Are we approving minutes in a planning meeting? Or regular?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, Emmeline Harrigan, Planning Director for the record. Our secretary asked that we do approve minutes at the following meeting if possible. We weren't doing that, and then we ended up having double meetings, people not remembering what occurred, and requests for holding those meeting minutes off. And then we were not posting those meeting minutes timely on the town clerk site. So our TPZ clerk specifically requested that we just, if possible, do the minutes following the meeting in which those minutes are taken, if possible.
So Kathy asked for that?
No, our TPZ clerk, Jody, our TPZ clerk, Jody.
Oh, sorry, I thought you just referenced Kathy. My apologies.
We used to meet we used to meet twice a month.
Would you like to be recognized, Commissioner Braun?
Yeah.
Would you like to be recognized, Commissioner Braun?
I'm sorry. Do I need to be recognized?
Are you asking to be recognized? I just want this to devolve into a working session. So go ahead.
Yes. When we used to meet twice a month, 24 times a year, we used to approve the minutes at the next session. But now that we're meeting every week, that's pretty quick to review the minutes, go back. You know, I would prefer to hold off on these minutes till our next meeting, which is only 2 weeks after the last meeting. After the meeting we're talking about with the minutes.
So are you moving to put to a vote that we own?
You have a motion on the table already.
We already have a motion on the table. So why don't we move on?
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. Commissioner Zabel.
Thank you very much. You know, for what it's worth, I didn't even get the agenda till late this afternoon. And I hadn't had an opportunity to look at the minutes either. And I really would appreciate it if we could do the minutes. We need to go on with our meeting now and then be able to have time to look at the minutes. Kathy needs to look at them. I need to look at them. Like I said, I only got the minutes a couple of hours ago. I only got the agenda a couple of hours ago.
I can speak to that. I inadvertently placed Commissioner Huntley's name twice or Commissioner Churchill's name twice in the email feed, and I apologize to Commissioner Zablak for that. So.
Sure.
May I ask Director Harrigan a question? Are there minutes being taken at this meeting?
Yes.
So if we don't vote on the minutes, then we would have to vote next meeting on 2 sets of minutes. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
So Commissioner Zabelak said she didn't receive them. I know that the agenda was posted on Friday, so Commissioner Zabelak's the only one who hasn't had a chance to read them. So there's a motion on the table to pass the meeting minutes without amendment. Should we just put that to a vote to see how that, or do we want to withdraw that? Motion.
I would like to make a motion to,
No, there's a motion on the table, so.
Right.
Um,
can I make a motion to,
amend the motion?
can I make a motion to your motion that we put off, that we table this until the next time? We suspend the decision until the next time, especially when one of our commissioners didn't get the minutes.
Commissioner Capozzi made the motion, so it's up to him to withdraw it, so. If he so selects to do so.
May I withdraw and make a new motion?
Sure.
Okay, I make a motion that I withdraw my first motion and make a new motion that we vote at the next meeting on the minutes in controversy right now and the minutes from this meeting. So 2 sets of minutes for the next meeting so that we maintain our cadence and don't get bogged down in future meetings over queries about multiple sets of meetings.
So I think you can just withdraw the motion.
I did.
Yeah, okay,
I
cool.
withdrew the motion, then made a new motion that we vote
All right.
next week on both sets of minutes that will
Okay.
be on the table.
I'll
So-
second that motion.
Then we would have to vote on that motion.
Yeah.
Okay,
We have a second from
Okay.
Commissioner Braun.
all right.
I
All-
seconded it.
Any discussion?
I appreciate Commissioner Capozzi's flexibility.
I
Thank
agree.
you.
Should we put it to a vote then? All those in favor of, please restate the motion.
My motion is postponing the vote on the minutes for next week, so we'll vote on 2 sets of minutes next week. The minutes from this meeting and the minutes from the previous meeting, we'll vote on next week.
All right, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Oh, Commissioner Delgado's there. We just don't see his face. You're there, Jonathan, right?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
All right. All right, so on to the issues in the public hearing. I'm gonna take the opportunity as the acting commissioner be running this meeting a little bit differently. Using guidelines that only apply or discussion of commission initiated text amendments. And these are not intended to limit public hearing or public participation as required by law. But I'd like to use 5-minute speaking turns here. Applied consistently which I will apply consistently regardless of a commissioner's position. And before recognizing anyone for a second turn, I will give every commissioner seeking recognition an initial opportunity to speak. And then I ask that we focus on the amendment's purpose, consistency with the plan of conservation and development, practical effects, implementation, and potential revisions based on the information presented. Commissioners should identify policy concerns, desired outcomes, and specific language requiring attention, but avoid repetition and extended line-by-line drafting from the dais. Where detailed drafting is needed, I will suggest that we refer this to staff, council if needed. Additional time or speaking turns will be allowed when needed to address new information, material issue, or necessary clarification. My purpose is to keep the discussion organized and moving, not to restrict meaningful participation. So I like to try doing this. And I will start with the people in the room as we normally do, and then go to the people remotely. So our first item of business is the traffic impact studies. And I know I'm dropping this on all of you, but Commissioner Mullen, could you maybe keep track of time? There's a clock behind you or right there. Sure, to 5 minutes.
Point of order,
Yes,
are you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, are you suggesting that the public speak before we finish our discussion of are we talking about the first item here, the traffic study item?
Yes, I'm suggesting the commissioners the commissioners take turns
Oh,
and
so you're
speak
talking about the public right now.
sequentially, the commissioners. So that's my suggestion, um, rather than have a little workshopping of this. So that's just that's the way I'll be
And-
working.
Is this is also a public hearing. Do you anticipate, I don't know who's there on remote, but do you anticipate members of the public speaking tonight, or do you anticipate us
I hope
working through this?
if we have time, I think that's the intention.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
If we have time, the intention is to hear from members of the public.
And what order are we going in terms of commissioner after commissioner?
As I said, we'll go with the people in the room first, and then we can go alphabetically after that. Yes.
And I just wanted to also offer, I know, I think some of you can also see in the room that our DPW Director, Frank Batiste, is also here, and may provide some additional information as needed for the proposed revisions. And if I could also point out, within the folder, we did get comments from the police department, the traffic division, Captain Izari, and also our fire marshal, John Cronin. And then there were some amendments that were sent after 5 today by Commissioner Braun and Monahan.
My
Director-
hand is raised. I have a question.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Sorry.
So I just want to understand, so you had said at the beginning that you were going to limit discussion and that this was not a working meeting and that we're not going to be going line by line. Is there a reason for that?
Because it is
Because
not,
this is a very, very important, regulation, and it's important that it's looked at more than for 5 minutes per person. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
so you'll have an unlimited number of turns. But the intent is for people to present concepts, because I don't think anybody on this commission is an expert in this area. I read traffic studies all the time, every week, a couple times a week. I'm not an expert. Director Batiste is an expert, and so as is Director Harrigan, and so I would defer to them for the exact language. But I'd like to keep this at a conceptual level and understand the intent of the concerns, and then the intent can be more specifically captured in the document.
Great, thank you.
And I don't want to limit conversation. I want to limit the duration of everyone's discussion of the topic to give others a chance and have equal time for everybody. That make sense?
Yeah, provided someone, I think it's just, some of these conversations, may require a few more minutes. So I just hope we're not going to be shut down if we speak for 6 minutes instead of 5.
Well, we can, if you're done with the 5, then we can go through everyone and then come back and you can go take a second or third bite at the apple. So.
I have another question. I would like actually to take a few moments to introduce the sort of lengthy thing that we submitted late today. It has.
You will have your 5 minutes to do that. So. I'm sorry, Director Batiste, did you have some introductory comments, or should we start?
I think, good evening, Frank Batiste, Director of Public Works. I reviewed the other red line. We had a good discussion at our last meeting. We made some updates, including the impact assessment for the, lesser impactful developments that aren't the major traffic generators by the state definition. I think we clarified a few things in there as requested. And overall, with this initial red line, I think it, satisfies my feelings on what we need to include, or how I feel, the items I think we need to include. I did just for the first time kind of get the other revisions tonight, so I was just trying to look through those quickly. But I'll try to answer any questions you have related to that. And I think I also wanted to, I know on the backup, there's also the write-up from the tech brief from the Yukon Technology Transfer Center. Just to give a little background there on what that is. For those of you that don't know, that is the LTAP program for the state of Connecticut. So this is, run by the University of Connecticut. They do a lot of research, and they provide guidance to all the municipalities and state DOT as well. So it is a valuable resource. And that, some of the items in there are in line with what we proposed, like the 100 peak hour vehicle trips, and then also, identifying the major traffic generators.
Okay. So since we're gonna start in the room, I'll start with my right. So go ahead, Commissioner Capozzi, do you have any comments, concerns, issues?
I don't. I do understand obviously why this is a very important amendment to our zoning regulations. In cases like this, I tend to defer to the experts and their rationale. I don't presuppose myself an expert on traffic to the nuances that are outlined in these new proposed regulations. So I look forward to hearing the experts weigh in.
You have 4 minutes left.
I yield my time.
Yeah, I agree with everything Commissioner Capozzi said there. I had like a couple like small questions, but I think it might be better to hear through, or
No,
should I
go, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so there was one point, it said that we would need to look into TPZ's ability to do like tolling for moderate traffic. Is that like a literal like toll, or is that like a fine to build? Like what exactly would that mean for us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the request was if there was a request by the TPZ Commission to have a new traffic impact study done, that it would toll the state statutory requirements for the timelines for processing an application. I do not know that that's legally allowed by this commission to extend a time frame for processing an application. So I've requested clarification from our town attorney. I fear that might be illegal if the applicant is not willing to grant us an extension of time.
May I make a comment just as someone who,
It'll be your turn. Some points later, so.
And yeah, just one more question, and then I think that's it. But in 24.14, section F, when it refers to 24.14.5 F, it refers to deliveries. Something I've noticed in a lot of areas with stuff like Uber Eats and it mentioned restaurants and delivery, with stuff like Uber Eats, Postmates, does that count as deliveries because it's not contracted by the business? It's like separate. I know
Very good question.
in the red line, waste removal and trash pickup was added, and this is delivery, is that just like the business's deliveries, or if there's a contractor like that? Because technically the Uber Eats driver is just like a private citizen, but it will possibly cause traffic issues.
If I may also, oftentimes when we review these large applications, especially for multifamily, we do in the garage areas, look for loading and unloading, and our expectation is that loading and unloading is for UPS deliveries, Amazon deliveries, food deliveries, drop off and pickup. So we do kind of assume that loading space is a multiple use loading space in our conversation with applicants. But I'll defer to Director Batiste if he feels like, we've turned a corner where we need something in addition, where we should be looking at that within our regulations.
I think the intent is any delivery going to the use. So it depends on what the use is, to Emmeline's point, if it's a multi unit residential space, you're gonna get a lot of Uber Eats and those sorts of deliveries. So I think the loading space and delivery space would account for both of those things.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking of it.
Whereas if it's a,
as
you know, it's a
yeah.
restaurant, you need delivery for, you know, supplies, food, et cetera. So, okay, it's based on the use of the submittal.
That's all the questions I had for this.
Okay, so as I said, we go alphabetically, and I think that brings us to Commissioner Braun. So you get 5 minutes, Commissioner Braun.
Hi, so we,
Yeah, 4:30, so go ahead.
pardon me?
Commissioner Mullen, I'm sorry, Assistant Director Mullen will give you a warning at 4:30, so.
What's
Yellow-
the warning?
He'll just
So
raise his hand.
We've presented, you know, significant red lines. We can't be expected in
I'm
5
sorry,
minutes.
it's Commissioner Braun, it's Commissioner Braun's turn to speak, so you'll have your chance alphabetically, so.
I feel like we're being censored, just so you know, just so you're aware.
You're not being censored. You will
Okay.
have your turn. And if you need a second turn, you will get a second turn.
I would like to use some of Commissioner Capozzi's unused time with his permission, because I do want to give a nice intro to this so everyone understands what we did, so we don't have to come back another time to review it.
You've got 5 minutes, okay? I'm trying to run this the same way the state legislature is run, the same way other bodies are run, and the way I've run corporate meetings my entire life. So I'm trying to run this in an orderly fashion. So can we start the 5 minutes now?
This is a planning session. This is not a legislative session in Hartford, and this is not one of your business meetings. This is a very, very important section of our zoning regulations, and we're at a planning session. So we should be able to speak for more than 5 minutes concurrently, and we should be able to respond to other commissioners' requests. So, and that is not toward my 5 minutes.
Is that towards my 5 minutes?
Nope.
Commissioner Braun, please go ahead.
So today, Commissioner Monahan, myself, and Commissioner Slayback submitted a fairly lengthy red line of the red line, if you will. So we took what the planning director marked up, and we marked it up again, and we gave kind of a lengthy memo, which probably no one has had a chance to read yet. But I just wanted to highlight a few points from it and indicate why, why we felt the need to go beyond what's been done. And first of all, I want to recognize that this is a very good step. I'm very happy we're doing this, because we don't have this in our regulations now, the requirement for the traffic study. And I think it's a very good start, and we've gotten most of the way there. There are, however, a few details that should be added so that we can fully rely on this to help govern what takes place in the future. Because we've all been to hearings where we've heard people that reside in the area who are basically experts in their own neighborhood say, the traffic study was done on the wrong, it was done during the pandemic. It was done during, school vacation. It was done at the wrong time of day. It did not address certain, idiosyncrasies of our neighborhood, which is different than anyone else's neighborhood. And the ITE, which is the manual that the traffic experts follow, might not relate to the local conditions right here. So we've all seen this in many, many public hearings. But now that we might not even get a public hearing, it's even more important that we have significant details on what we expect. So, and have them a little bit more objective and more metric oriented, less subjective, so that we can hang our hat on that. So we can feel confident that if a traffic study or traffic impact analysis is done, it's done with the level of detail we need to protect us, pedestrians, bike riders, people parking their cars, going into their homes, etc. So we came up with a red line, and it's pretty lengthy, and a memo as well. So I would like to go through some of it, and it's going to be hard to do in the remaining 4 minutes I have. But I'll go through our memo first, and maybe I'll go through the details later. So one issue that we had was what triggers it, what triggers the traffic impact study. And I also feel like we should better define traffic impact study versus traffic impact assessment. we should have an actual definition there. I don't think I see it in there, but what triggers it, we would like to have a little bit more detail. So we put that in our regulations. So if you go through the regulations, I don't know, did everyone get an email or a hard copy handout of it?
I did.
Yes,
Okay, so people there, is it in color, by the way?
yes,
Oh, it is. Fabulous. Thank you. So if you look at the red sections were done by planning director, and I believe that incorporated a lot of the discussion we had at the last meeting. The blue sections are things that we added to that. So if you go through page by page, you can see we added a section at the very beginning that prior to adoption, revisions and future amendments of the section shall be circulated to the Fairfield Police Department and Fire Department. That's already been done. We have their input. I do not think this sort of joint effort of myself and the two other commissioners incorporated the fire and police department. So I think we should discuss that tonight, what they suggested, and they should be incorporated in. And going to the next section, so that was 25.14.1, 25.14.2, now 0.3, the requirement, and this has a lot to do with the triggering. We just want to make sure it's triggered because, again, going forward, when we start getting applications in that are not allowing us to hold a public hearing or not allowing us under the new housing law to have any discretion at all, we need to be able to rely on things like the traffic study. And the traffic study is one of the most, perhaps the most important piece of evidence in anything that we review on an individual project basis.
Commissioner Braun,
So
you have
we
2
just,
seconds.
we decided to put some metrics in here. We looked at the town of Westport, which is our neighboring town, which we felt had a more advanced view of this in their regulations. And we did a few comparisons. So we added some language, not to plagiarize, but we thought they had some good ideas. And we added some language to the triggering mechanism. And I'll just talk about this in my first 5 minutes. In addition to the triggering language that our staff added.
Commissioner Braun, I think your time is up. So if you
Well,
could,
I'd like to.
can you just wrap up
Yeah,
what
I'll
you're
wrap it
saying?
up.
and
Yep,
give
okay.
give another
So-
commissioner a chance to speak?
Yeah, well, I'm presenting something, so I think people should hear what I'm presenting so they can
Well,
discuss
I
it.
know, but we have other commissioners here who probably have something to say, and I just want to give
Well,
them
I'd like to say what I say so they can say something in response.
but just
I don't want-
if you could wrap up, I would
Yeah, I'll
appreciate
wrap it up in about 2 minutes.
it.
Okay.
No, you've had your 5 minutes.
Excuse me, I think you're elevating form over substance here. I'm trying to present something that I would like the other commissioners to comment on.
I want to give,
If I have
excuse
to
me,
present.
Commissioner Braun, I would like to give the other commissioners a chance to speak.
How are they
Okay?
gonna comment? They haven't even read it yet.
I-
I'm trying
I
to give it
yield
to them
my-
right now.
I yield my time to Kathy to continue speaking. Take my 5 minutes, Kathy.
Okay, go ahead. Well, actually, but Commissioner Braun is, the next person to speak is going to be Commissioner Delgado. So when Commissioner Monahan's turn comes again, you can finish up.
You're saying I cannot present the point I wanted to present right now?
I said wrap up what you're saying. It's
Okay.
Commissioner Delgado's
Okay.
turn to speak.
So we added
No,
several
ahead.
triggering items. In addition to the trip count trigger that's in what our staff put together, we shall also be required to have a study if the following metrics occur, so this is a very objective standard for requiring a traffic study. If there are 15 or more new residential units, 40 or more parking spaces in a new or expanded parking lot, or more than 10,000 square feet of gross floor area in a new or expanded building or group of buildings, these thresholds shall apply to any site or to adjacent or interrelated sites that exceed the thresholds in the aggregate over any 5-year period. And that combines really 2 issues. One is having more of a detailed, objective triggering mechanism that we can rely on. And the other is to consider the cumulative impact of this with other developments over time, which Westport does, and we need to start doing because the cumulative impact is not being assessed. We only look at each project on its own, and we can all see where that's gotten us. It's gotten us to a lot of congestion, a lot of flooding, et cetera. So one of the things farther down in our red line is talking about aggregating projects together when we consider them and creating a baseline that the town can rely on. In other words, a traffic study for this will go into the town's sort of inventory of traffic studies in an electronic format, so we can rely on this when we look at the cumulative impact going forward. And I think these are important things to put in, to sort of elevate this regulation to something that's extremely usable and workable going forward, so we can plan on the cumulative impact. We're going to get a lot of development activity based on the housing law and our own regulations that we passed. So that's what we're trying to do, raise this up a little bit so we can rely on it as these
Commissioner Braun,
applications start coming in.
Can we, okay, you could, Commissioner Monahan said she would yield her time, so let's go to Commissioner Delgado and then we'll come back to you if you have anything more to address. So Commissioner Delgado, you have 5 minutes too.
Commissioner Randolph, I appreciate the order you're trying to give us. I was actually going to yield my time to Commissioner Monahan because I know that they worked on their, these changes together so that there can be continuity in the presentation, and I'm happy to go in the next round.
Okay. Commissioner Monahan, did you want to?
No, I mean, Kathy started. I'm happy to kind of talk. I mean, I think it's important that we look at what our neighboring towns have done. We have one great document we started with. We made some changes to it. We went back and did some analysis. We looked at what other towns had kind of done and said, how does this impact us? Is this something that we should be incorporating into should we be incorporating this into our regulations as well? Why did we leave it out? I noticed in some of the in the regulations, we took the control back. We need to take the control back as the commission and not just give it to the planning director. I think that that's important. Several things that were incorporated into the original, that we originally discussed, were not included in the next draft. So we've kind of added them back in here and kind of expanded on them. So, as Commissioner Braun had said, the first thing we talked about is kind of the trigger. I think that's obviously incredibly important. It was something that was not discussed in the first draft. And I would like to know if we could discuss that, to say why. Is that something that we think is important? Do we think it's not important? Why wasn't it included? Did we look at other towns before drafting ours and whatnot? So Mr. Petit, could you talk to that, please?
Well, let's go through, let's go through everyone.
But this is a planning session. This is not, lay it all out there and then hope that one person responds to each thing. We had a great meeting in our last meeting where we broke down something and we went through it. Why can't we do the same today? What is the certain, reasoning for 5 minutes, speak your turn, move on to the next person? The people in the room have the priority to speak versus the people who are remote, and so on and so forth. What is the reasoning behind that? I would like Mr. Batiste to weigh in, if you would.
I'd like to, I think.
Well,
I-
can we
let me-
just
let
let
me-
Kathy
Let
continue?
me ask Mr. Batiste to answer all the questions at the end and give him a turn, so it's not, so we get everybody, all the commissioners have a chance to get their questions out there. And then Mr. Batiste can perhaps answer some of those questions. Okay, rather than, so get all the questions out on the table. Mr. Batiste can answer them. So could you please just restate your question so Mr. Batiste has that question clearly?
I'd like to know if we consulted other towns' regulations.
Asking
And
about triggers, I think you said what triggers a TIS? I think that was your question, right?
no, that was not my question. Please don't mistake
I'm sorry,
what I
I
said.
misunderstood
I
you. Go ahead.
specifically said, could you please, I don't know why my screen is turning different colors, but could you please indicate whether or not we consulted local town, neighboring towns' regulations on this topic before we drafted this? Who specifically drafted this? And was there a reason that we also didn't include certain items that we discussed openly in our first meeting?
So
That's my first question. And
can
then
you
we'll talk to
specify which
Kathy and
ones?
we'll come back around.
Could you specify which questions you think we still need to address?
Sure. Well, I'll go through them after Kathy speaks.
All right, so Commissioner Zablock?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, the requirements cannot be vague and undefined as they are. So much of this, it just needs to be rewritten. What I'd like to do is give Commissioner Braun the remainder of my time because she is so much more articulate on all of this than I am. So could you please take my time, Commissioner Braun?
I don't know if I'm next in line.
No, you're gonna take the rest of my time.
Oh.
Please.
Go ahead, Commissioner Braun.
So getting back to the triggering, we have general triggers, which we discussed briefly last time. And again, what triggers a traffic study is very important, because if you don't have a traffic study, you don't have any assurance that it's going to be safe. And we have seen in the past, when you do have competing traffic studies in a public hearing, if you have neighbors that can afford to hire an expert, you usually have dueling traffic studies, and you do find that they poke holes in it. Sometimes the original traffic study, it might underestimate the count in a way that another traffic expert might not. So rather than have the sort of general, only relying on the sort of general triggering mechanism, that's why we decided to add the specific details so that it would be triggered more often. So what we had written before was if the new development or redevelopment or change of use is projected to generate 100 or more peak hour vehicle trips, as determined using the most recent edition of the ITE trip generation manual, okay, that could be underestimated and then you wouldn't have it. So that's why we decided we needed to add these more specific requirements. So if you do have a development of 15 or more units, or 40 or more parking spaces, or 10,000 or more square feet, that would be the threshold that would also generate a traffic study. And then when we were talking about aggregating, and I'm just going to find in our memo where we talked about aggregating. So in Westport, okay, they rely on each applicant to draw on the town's most recent baseline traffic study as the source of their background traffic assumptions. We don't do that. We don't have that. We need to start doing that, because again, the cumulative impact of all of our development, which is going to continue at an increasing pace now based on our newly passed regulations and on the housing law that was passed in November. So we need to consider the cumulative impact. And this is a big change from what we have. From what we have in here, and a big change, obviously, from not having the regulation at all.
Sorry.
To begin.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Director Harrigan.
Can I ask a clarifying question as to what you mean by that? So do you mean that our engineering department has to conduct a traffic study themselves, or they go back to the most recent one submitted? What if there's a 2-year gap? Each individual traffic study does their own counts on the roadway right before they submit their traffic study. So that's really clear, like, recent information. So I don't really understand the intent of that particular section relying on a prior traffic study. I don't know when that traffic study's from. I don't know if you're directing our.
Director Harrigan, I understand the question. When it's my turn to speak, I will ask Mr. Patisse to explain how it works. Okay, so I understand the question.
Okay,
Go ahead, Commissioner Braun, how much time does she
Yeah,
have
well,
left?
I'm just saying,
12.
we would require the information to be supplied electronically, so we can go into, I guess, our engineering department, and we need to hear from engineering on this to see how this could be done, but they're doing it in Westport. So we need to have the traffic studies that are submitted in different applications be sort of put into an inventory of traffic studies and find a way to combine that information. So we have a database that we can draw on, so we can understand the impact on a cumulative basis of what's going on. Everything we do is in a silo. We do stormwater things as well, and yet it gets worse and worse. Same thing with traffic. So what we're suggesting is that the information we get be provided electronically, which I don't think it is. I think it's done in a PDF, which is not database friendly. And that we would have a way of combining that information, so that going forward, we know what the different traffic studies are that we found acceptable. We might not find them all acceptable. So that's really the point of doing the aggregation of the data. I'm just finding in our memo where we discussed.
do you have anything else to add? Because it's I've got a turn to take.
No, go on. Yep, go on. I'll
thank-
I'll supplement it later.
I just want to, first of all, thank everybody for their engagement on this topic. Everybody keeps asking who wrote this. I wrote a first version of this and sent it to Commissioner Noonan a year and a half ago. So the very first version of this, and it's gone through, it was before, Director Batiste was here. It's gone through other people. So I'm very familiar with what's written here. I do deal with traffic studies frequently. But let me address some of the questions. So, and I'm going to just give Director Batiste some questions for him to answer and to let him go next. So one of the questions is, what triggers a TIS, TIA? So please, not now, but it's your turn. And then the cumulative impact, if you could explain how a TIS calculates the traffic volume by looking at the proposed volume, the background volume, and the existing approved volume as the total volume. If you could explain that concept, that would be helpful. Then I'm going to go through I'm going to go through the markups here, just to address some of the questions. Other towns, let us know how this compares to Stamford, which is a city and has much more sophisticated and much more sophisticated traffic management programs. It's a bigger place. They've gone through a lot, and why that, how this compares. And then there's some other questions in here about really, okay, I'm going to go through this systematically. 2514.3, it says new development. So look at entering, exiting combination of both directions. This is addressed in the ITE standards for preparing a document. And then there's some questions about what triggers a TIS, TIA. Could you explain what state standard triggers that, Commissioner? I'm sorry, Director Batiste, when you get to that. And then let's see, commission requested traffic impact studies. I think that's what we're trying to get away from. We're trying to, I'm sorry, it's my turn to speak. My purpose of this is to create a consistent set of rules. They're consistent with federal, state laws that gives developers and applicants a consistent rule set and does not subject them to arbitrary requests. So I think commission request studies are not appropriate. And then there's some questions about which versions to use, and I appreciate you going through that. But a lot of these standards have not been adopted. So that's why there's some inconsistency in there, just to explain that. And then under 2514.4, we can't override OSTA. OSTA is a state law, so if OSTA says something, it can't come back to us to appeal. I don't think that would be legally permissible. And then on 2514.5, it says for projects requiring substantial excavation, I believe that's covered in the building ordinance for demolition. I defer to to Director Harrigan to address that question. And then on Q, under 2514.4, it goes through a bunch of baseline modeling. All of that is covered in TI and basically the CT dot standards, and incorporating this into our ordinance would create contradictions. I think the intent is correct, but that's covered. Could you just confirm that these sightline standards are elsewhere? I know I'm just rapid firing your questions here, but then what is it? Oh, and then under 2514.6, study currency traffic impact study submitted with an applicant shall be based on traffic counts. Again, can you go through how a TIS, what data is needed and when that data is technically aged out? So if you could give us TIS 101, that's what really what I'm asking here. So that's all I have right now. But I really appreciate the thoughtful engagement on this. Great conversations. I believe that the ordinance, more or less as written, addresses all of your questions by reference to state and national standards. That the issues you raise are valid.
Seconds, Commissioner.
They're valid, and I believe that they're all covered. So thank you. So Director Batiste, could you
Yes,
If you remember all my questions or the other questions.
I think so. I will ask for
You
clarification
get more than 4 minutes. So
if I need to. So did we look at other towns' regulations and do some comparisons? Yes, we did. Our engineering department, worked on this as well. I don't know every single town they looked at, but I know they did. I can tell you that, I have my own experience in Stanford, so I looked at that. I believe there what triggered our traffic impact study was based on the number of parking spaces. I believe it was 50 or more. However, like I mentioned earlier, I referenced that Yukon T2 Center document as well. There's 100 peak hour vehicle trips or more is pretty standard as well. As far as who wrote the document, I believe Commissioner Randolph touched on that. And then I believe Director Harrigan and her staff worked on it. Then they sent it to our, Public Works and Engineering. I had engineering look at it first and then send it to me. So that's where it got developed there. Maybe I'll come back to this one, but I know someone mentioned things that were part of the discussion that were left out. So maybe we go back to that just because I was going to ask for specifics. As far as the cumulative effect in the database goes, so, once again, I am relatively, new here, coming up on a year, so I don't have a wealth of knowledge as far as how we did things prior to me being here. However, with everything we've done with Complete Streets and the Fairfield Traffic Authority and our Q alerts, along with our traffic studies we're getting now, engineering has been, cataloging those. We're trying to maintain a GIS layer too, where that information's available. So the idea there going forward is to have that database, because it also helps us too from a design standpoint as we look for projects around town. It's good to have that historical data there. Typically, if a development comes in where there is a traffic impact study required, you would take those other developments into account if they've been approved and look like they're moving forward. We can provide that information to the applicant as well, so they also have access to that information. Because during a traffic impact study, you have to look at the volumes that are there today, as well as projecting out the future. So there's a number of ways to do that. One is just looking at your development itself, what that'll look like projected out as time goes on. But then you have to take into account those other buildings around or the other development around as well. So that does get taken into account in the study. The draft here for what triggers the TIS is that 100 peak hour vehicle trips. As I mentioned, comparing to like Stanford, it was 50 parking spaces. I think the Westport one you referenced had a little less. I think it was 40 or more parking spaces. The 15 or more new residential dwelling units, I guess my concern there would be, how many we're then going to have to review. It's not always a big impact to have 15 units. It really depends on where it's going. I mentioned like the Stanford too. I had that regulation earlier up. I was trying to find it. But the way theirs was written is, a traffic study is triggered by, just to give you a comparison of another town, city. Theirs is written as 50 or more parking spaces requires a traffic impact study. However, there's a line in there that says the director of transportation can request it for, any other impacts they see fit, which more or less was in line with what we had in our original proposal before we added that traffic impact assessment portion in there. So what triggers the TIS? I guess it would depend on what this commission approves. If you approve what we had originally drafted, it would be the 100 peak hour vehicle trips. And the clarification I do see in your markup, you had that clarification of entering, exiting, or combination of both directions. In like the IT manual, it does say that it is both. It's a cumulative peak hour trip. It doesn't matter if it's going in or out of two different exits. It's from that site entering or leaving in that peak hour, doesn't matter which direction they go, that's the total number of trips in and out of it. I believe you mentioned something about the sightline standard, and that's covered in another section in your zoning regs, I believe.
I
Or
know,
were we saying we're gonna add it in the other?
No, I think it's addressed in here already. I think we added it within this section for sightlines. I think it's number
Where is that?
P
Yes.
2514 for
Yes.
P.
So we added the sight line, that is a requirement for both the TIA or the TIS, so even smaller developments would still also have to meet those requirements of sight lines in looking at the on-street parking adjacent to it as well, the proposed egress points.
And I don't think that we actually, to Westport's, I don't think that we asked to get that from Connecticut TOT. I think we have them do those counts and that road speed analysis right there and then. Like, I don't think we have,
Mhm.
right now, we don't have them. So I think what's in conflict right now is P and letter T. So I think they're adding as a reference Westport's.
Okay,
But I think that my understanding of the way that the engineering department has required it is they have them go out and look at speeds today,
yes,
not data from 18 months ago.
correct.
So they look at speeds today, they figure out that 85th percentile, and then the sight line is based on that speed today, not from 18 months ago.
That's
On
correct.
on an adjacent street. They have to create, so theirs is the applicant through you.
go ahead.
Would like to speak. The
Go ahead.
applicant shall conduct a speed study on a street adjacent to the project site to determine the 85th percentile speeds for the intersection site distance calculation, or shall submit speed data sufficient to calculate the 85th percentile from the CDDOT within the preceding 18 months.
So
So do you believe?
So it's
Mr.
either
Petit,
or, the way
Yes.
this is written.
So the design speed for the site distance calculation at each siteway shall be 85th percentile speed at the site, at the driveway as determined by the field measurement. Do you believe that anything that we've added here should be removed? I mean, if anything, we should be more restrictive, not less. And I understand where you're saying that, 15 units, I think you just said would be a lot to review and that it wouldn't cause significant traffic. I think 15 units, I mean, just looking at, you can look at the project on Stilson Road, and you could argue that that will create substantial traffic. So, to say that 15 units will not create substantial traffic, I think that we are not being restrictive enough in terms of what we're requesting. And I think looking at the neighboring town like Westport versus a town like Stamford, we're more like Westport than we are like Stamford. So we are a growing town. We are not a city like Stamford. And I think that we should be looking at, we looked at Hartford, we looked at West Hartford, we looked at Westport, we looked at Norwalk, we looked at all of the other towns, and they're more restrictive rather than less. So I just don't understand why we wouldn't be amenable to adding these restrictions that we added. Even though they're mentioned elsewhere, it's easier to find in one specific space. And it also allows us, to know that if this is not coming in front of us again, that we know that you have all the data and all the information that you need to make educated decisions on behalf of the residents of the town, and looking at cumulative information and cumulative data. So I would really like if you would go through the additions that we made to say, Frank, do these make sense? And should we add them, not just because we propose them
Monahan?
after the fact?
Commissioner Monahan.
Sorry, I just felt the need.
Commissioner Monahan, could you just state a specific question for Director Patiste to answer, and then
Yes,
I think we
could you
should
please, go through all of the additions that Commissioner Bronziglack and myself put forth and look at them and to say, is there a reason they should not be added, specifically?
So let me, I think that's a reasonable request. I did go through your entire document, I looked at it. I got here about 5:30, read it. But I think Director Batiste and Director Harrigan will go through your document word by word and evaluate it. I have already, they're the professionals. So yes, I think they will do that, but doing it right now in the meeting is probably not the right time to do it. I'd like to give them some extra time to look at it. But just, so if we could, Director
As long
Batiste,
as we're gonna keep this meeting open, that's great.
if we,
Are you got?
Pardon?
No, I was just gonna say, yes, I apologize. I didn't see all of your markups until like 5 minutes before this meeting started. So that's why I can't really sit here and say like, I don't have a problem with anything or I can approve them all. I need time to look at it. So that I just wanted to
And I
clarify that.
appreciate that. And that's why we wanted to
So-
go over it line by line, because there's not that much. And we wanted you to weigh in on it so that the public can also hear your thinking on this topic. That's
Uh,
all. So.
Just to
now that the
clarify
public-
what I meant about the 15 units too, I wasn't trying to say that that's never an impact. It can be, it kind of depends on where it is, what other uses are around it. So that's why I was saying, to set the bar that low, it might trigger a lot more than we need to look at. But I think that's why we were trying to include that other language where we had, the director of public works or town engineer could require it when they see the development come in based on a number of things like where it is and what the uses are.
Director Batiste, could you, and again, I think you and I are probably, and perhaps the planning staff are the only ones who really deal with traffic studies. So could you distinguish between a traffic impact study, the difference between that and a traffic impact assessment, and why it might be onerous to require a TIS when only a TIA might be required, and the cost?
Yes, I mean, a TIA is a much, I don't know the right way to say it, like a less, sorry, the words are escaping me, but it's not as intensive as a full traffic impact study. If you're doing a TIA, you might just be able to pull existing data we have and base it off that. You're probably not doing a capacity analysis of multiple intersections around the site and that sort of thing, which are all very intensive. The traffic engineers have software they use to analyze all that. It doesn't, dive into that depth of detail of every movement around the site. It just looks more at, how many trips are we generating in and out, and let's look at the entrance and egress. It's kind of like a traffic study light, if you would say so. And it is a lot more expensive to do a full TIS.
You feel like you have these questions? Should we go back to the commissioners?
I'm trying, did I miss
If I could
any?
also just pose a quick concern. So I think anywhere where we are basically within this language, adding extra tide to the application by implication that a traffic impact study is insufficient. I just want to be very careful because the state statute is what the state statute is in terms of an applicant's right to understand that they have defendable timeframes in which this commission has to review their application. And I just caution adding language. And again, I've asked the town attorney to give us guidance on this, but I just caution on anything that sends an applicant back out to do more that may impact the application processing time as dictated by state law. So for example, in Q, the town engineer may require the applicant to reconduct counts during a representative time of year. If an applicant, and we just saw this, for example, with the Southport daycare, that's an applicant who is in contract to purchase a property. They don't have time to wait till school starts to go back out and do traffic counts. And we don't really have the right to ask them to do that because they have a statutory limit in which we can process their application. So I just have concerns about things that are a little too open-ended based on what the rights of an applicant are as represented in state law. So I just want to be very cautious on that. The other thing that I have a little bit of a concern on is item H within 2514.5. This is kind of vague language in terms of what is substantial excavation, substantial demolition. We have that clearly defined within section 21, which is why I didn't add it to the revision and why I directed the commission to let's add to our list, looking at land excavation and or the land excavation and fill section, because I do feel like we do need to make some modifications to that. By way of history, I feel like there's an exemption in there that really, if there was an inland wetland permit that was issued for those types of activities, that we kind of gave that, we gave a little bit of that jurisdiction to inland wetlands. The Inland Wetlands Commission today will only look at the portion of the property that affects those inland wetlands. So if you've got a very large multi-acre property and you've got 600 feet away, somebody who wants to add a lot of fill, it's not really going to be within the inland wetlands jurisdiction for them to look at that as comprehensively. So I do really want to bring that back before the commission to make some revisions to that section as well, which clearly defines what triggers substantial fill and substantial excavation. So I'd prefer if we just kind of keep that exclusive to that section and not muddy it within the traffic impact study.
Commissioner Capozzi, it's your turn to go again. Do you have any other comments?
No, I mean, my, and I don't mean to speak for the other commissioners, my feeling is, how do I phrase this? When, I think, when folks are asking about the aggregate and to compare to a prior study, I think the idea of that I agree with, and perhaps Director, you me being a sort of layperson with respect to this, I'll just give you a nuts and bolts example. In one of my first meetings as a commissioner, we had somebody come in to talk about a large scale development, and they had a traffic study where they said that the assessment with this, many hundreds of units proposed development, the traffic impact during rush hour would be a net zero. And I challenged the traffic study person, and I said anyone with two eyeballs could see that and who had been at that intersection during rush hour on any given weekday could empirically know that was not true. And in my opinion, but so I guess the question is, my long story longer, the question is, how do you ensure that if a private developer is basically calling an expert witness to and paying that person to spit out a traffic study that tells the story that allows them to build this building, how do you make sure that they're starting, that everybody's starting at the same ground zero, and that the result, whatever their study is reliable? Because there is an inherent conflict of interest. If I hire somebody, who's an expert to generate a study, I'm paying them a lot of money to give me a study that is going to hopefully, look favorable on my proposed project. In other words, their duty of care is not to the town of Fairfield. Their duty of care is to the person who's paying them a lot of money to do the study. So how do you balance those two tensions?
So, I mean, how do we manage it when we review it? I mean, that's what we take into account when we're reviewing the study. We do look at things like that trip generation manual that we've spoken about.
Sure.
It doesn't always have every use in it. So sometimes someone might be interpolating between two different uses. Like, for instance, I think they added like boutiques in the 12th edition, like a boutique fitness. That wasn't a use before. So someone might say, well, that's between a gym and, some other use. So, everything's not always clear cut in there. So that's where we have to review it from the town standpoint and say, well, what do we think is reasonable to, protect us from adding too much traffic to that road?
And how do you, and what are you
there's-
basing that, you know, is it based on your sort of personal expertise, or is there a sort of a baseline, you know, objective metric that you compare against?
It's the, expertise of the staff reviewing it. Yes, that's where that comes in. And I don't know the specific development you're speaking of, but, sometimes someone may look at different uses of a site, say, well, if it was this use that they're allowed to have, it would be this many trips. We're only doing this and it's not as many as that.
Right.
That's where we have to look at our engineering judgment, the surrounding area, and work with that traffic engineer to come to an agreement. That's part of the review process with them. In my experience, you go through those, and if you have those types of questions, you typically do that on the front side while they submit the traffic study. There's some back and forth. And then when you're finally going for the approval, the study represents what you've agreed on with them and you think is right for the town.
Right, okay.
Commissioner Huntley, any other questions?
Just two quick ones. For this document that we were given, is there any difference between the blue and the purple text in terms of meaning?
I believe that blue is Commissioner Monahan's comments and purple are Commissioner Braun's comments.
Okay, thank you. And then I apologize if I misunderstood any other commissioners, but in terms of, I believe someone raised a concern about approved developments not being put in the traffic study, but I just wanted to clarify 25.14.5G does like make sure that they're included.
25.
It would ensure that.
An ITE standard.
It is. Where did you point to it in here? Which section?
25.4, it's like point D in the last 25.14.5.
25.
And it says future traffic volume projections for
Yes.
conditions. So that would be taken into account.
That's where you take it into account.
Okay.
It's the built condition is where you have to take into account the other.
And
Right,
and
great.
background growth. So they look at background growth, which is.
There's a growth factor you get that you apply to the traffic volume that grows it further out years. DOT approves a lot of those as well. People typically go to them for that growth factor. I did just want to, one question that didn't come up today, but came up last time was the trip generation edition, 11 versus 12. 12 is the current one. It was adopted August 25. However, I was looking at even DOT's OSTA still accepts the 11th because it's still that time in between where not everyone even has it yet. Like, for instance, we don't have a copy of 12. It's like over $1,000 to buy it. So I think for right now, like the state still accepts 11, but I'm fine with it being 12th or newer. Or 12th or latest edition. But I know that came up in last meeting, so I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Could you just clarify that, why there's lag? And I think you just explained it.
Well, it's like not everyone even has it yet. It takes some time it's expensive to procure it. And like the state hasn't even updated like if you go on their major traffic generation, requirements at OSTA, I believe it hasn't been it was updated in 24, so it still says 11th. So they haven't updated that document yet, so they still accept it.
Any other questions?
I think that was all that I had.
Okay, Commissioner Braun, it's your turn. Commissioner Braun? I think you're on mute.
Hi,
Go ahead, Chip.
okay. So I had a couple of questions in terms of the time frame. So one of the objections I've heard tonight is it could get into an applicant's, deadlines or the time they're allowed to use. And it is true. We do have 65 days from the day we receive an application. By receiving, that means when we bring it in and refer it to a public hearing. So that's the day we receive it. We have 65 days from there to begin a public hearing. And then we have 35 days to conduct a public hearing. The applicant can give multiple extensions not to exceed another 65 days. And just getting back to a question that was raised earlier by Commissioner Churchill, I do not believe,
Huntley.
I'm not aware of anything that can toll
Commissioner Huntley.
deadlines, so, other than there's something to do with wetlands, but, if we don't hear back from wetlands, that could delay things a little bit, but I don't think we could suspend those deadlines that are statutory, and those do relate to, the applicant's rights. So the applicant can give a lot of consents for extensions, and they've done so many, many times. It's very common, actually, for the applicant to do so. So, but my question is for the director is, when we have these regulations drafted, this gives the notice to the world of what we expect. So if we expect something to be triggered at a lower level or a more restrictive level, they know that, and then they can do that. That's why we added all of these more objective standards rather than simply relying on them to say, well, it didn't reach 100, and maybe the ITE doesn't say 100 trips would be generated by a 15 unit. Well, Westport thinks 15 units is enough to require a study, and we should do the same as Westport. So that's why we put it in here. So it would be triggered. But when do you see these discussions taking place with engineering, and there's decision making that you would be making or the town engineer would be making in terms of this isn't good enough, go back to the drawing board, do another type, get more data, whatever. That I believe would all take place before the final application is submitted to us, perhaps even at the code review level where, and just to explain for everyone who doesn't know, code review is an informal, voluntary way an applicant can run his application through the various town departments. Our staff runs it, and they keep minutes of it, and usually I request them to be supplied in a public hearing, but it's not usually done on a final plan. It's not required. It's sort of informal notes or comments by various town departments. So my thinking is these things could bubble up during code review or at some point before the application actually comes to us. How do you understand that as working?
Yes, I agree with you. Yes, it would come up during code review, or, oftentimes people even before that code review meeting come meet with our staff and ask what they'll require. So I would imagine that happening at that point, not once they've submitted, would be to catch it before we even got to there.
Because these projects are a long time in the making, and
Yes.
I've seen code reviewers that are 3 or 4 years old. They seem quite outdated, but again, it's not a legal requirement. It's just information. A lot of questions were asked by various departments 2 years ago or 6 months ago, and it's another issue. I never know if they were answered or not. But yeah. So I guess my thought is that if you say to them, you didn't do your study during the right time of year, you're doing a daycare facility, which is primarily occupied, during the school year, most likely, but you did your study during late July. Do you see that as commonly being, put forth to you before it goes to zoning as a formal application? Because to me, that would solve the issue of the time frame running out.
So are you asking, would they submit that information to us before the
I would-
application?
Yeah, like put it this way, if we pass the regulation
Yeah.
saying you have the authority to ask for more studies or do it the right way, do it better, do it during better time of year. Do you see them if we pass these regulations, once they read the regulations, do you see them doing things earlier so that, before they actually submit it, you can ask them to redo it or to get more data?
I mean, yes, short answer is yes. I do think, you're always, anytime you pass something, a new regulation like this, there's probably going to be some growing pains, so to speak, that goes with it. And I think you probably will see more people coming to us earlier as a result of those regulations. Now that they're, once they're solidified, I would imagine, I know if I was, working for someone developing a property, that's what I would do. I would want to get ahead of it, because it's relatively new as well. But that being said, people aren't used to it yet. So there probably will be that period of time where, you have that little back and forth, more last minute. But I do think overall, the long-term impact will be people would submit it or speak to us sooner. Yes.
And do you see a situation where a TIA, which is the lower level,
30 seconds.
could trigger a TIS? In other words, you find enough information in the engineer, like you would be getting the TIA, we don't. We're not even involved yet till it gets submitted to us, right? And then we don't even get involved until we refer it to a formal hearing, which
Right.
would be a week or two away, right? So you're doing all the homework for us. Thank you very much. You know, so
Yes.
you're gonna get perhaps a TIA that might be triggered. Could a TIA trigger a TIS, which is the higher level, more data oriented study?
I think your time's up. Let me just throw something in, these questions are good. And I think, do we have a scoping? Is there a scoping application that goes in before the determine? So so let me just explain what a scoping application is. So I'm gonna build a Chick-fil-A, a warehouse, built a lot of warehouses. You know, a residential. So I go in and I say, here's my location. Here's the number of units. Here's the number of stalls for Chick-fil-A. Here's the number of trucks going in. And that determines, you look up in the ITE, here's the volume. So that says you've got more or less than 100. So if you've got more than 100, then you're automatically kicked to a TIS, which requires a traffic count. If you're less than 100, you do a TIA, which primarily looks at turning radiuses and safety and sight lines. So you've got so perhaps we could add a scoping meeting to our requirement here to say an applicant should have a scoping application, which is how I do it. And I apply, you know, I work in Pennsylvania, but it's required in Pennsylvania for scoping, but that would, I think, address Commissioner Braun's concern that, you know, what are we getting into? I think that's the general question. What does this project really involve? How big is it? Are we above 100 and below 100? And by the way, Pennsylvania, it's 200 to do a TIS. 100 is very low. It used to be 150 in Pennsylvania. It's 200. 100 is very low. So if we had a scoping step added to this, I think that would address many of her concerns, which are reasonable concerns.
So I think right now, we don't have a formal, you know, scoping requirement or meeting. I think because we don't have these regulations set, we probably get less people coming to us and having that conversation on the front side.
Yeah.
You know, like for instance, when I was in Stanford, we didn't always have a formal scoping meeting, but because we have these requirements, people are used to working with you. They know, and they get to a point where they are coming to you ahead of time because they want all that. They don't want to go down the road of doing a whole traffic study, only have you come back and say you don't agree with their findings or how they were looking at it. So that typically does happen on the front side. I don't know that it happens a lot now because we don't have these.
We haven't needed
We don't
to.
have anything set in stone that says like, these are our requirements. So therefore, I don't think we get that as much.
But if we had added a scoping step to this, I'm just throwing that out for consideration because I think a lot of the questions that are being raised would be addressed by the applicant would come in, and I'll pick Chick-fil-A. Because that's it's an obvious one. The Chick-fil-A is this big, it's got this many lanes. And then we would know whether it had to do a TIS.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Versus, you know, the new branch bank that's going in, you know, by the Rite Aid. Right? Do we have to do a TIS for that? Probably not. Right? Because it doesn't meet the peak traffic hours. But a scoping step would, I think, clarify a lot of, and it's what I've done.
And it wasn't a change in use, for example, right?
Right.
Like it was a bank to a bank.
So I'm just, maybe we could consider adding a scoping step.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, it also helps us on the review side because you take the time to meet with you know, you get to know a lot of the engineers who submit things too. So you get to meet with them ahead of time. Like I said, you have that discussion, you're more on the same page when it's submitted. It also, you know, helps our review time because it's easier to then go through and say, all right, did they do everything we said, as opposed to starting from scratch and looking at it that way. I guess my question might be for Emmeline, just like, would you want to put that scoping meeting language in the zoning regs, or?
I just don't see that we can require it.
When
think
do you
it's-
say
I
if you
think it's good.
require it or not, I guess would be my
I think
question.
I think it's good practice. I mean, to be honest, I have not gotten, when I recommend to somebody, hey, this is a big enough project
Mhm.
that you really should do a code review, I don't get pushback from applicants. And that's really, you know, I think a lot of the things that are kind of addressed in here as questions in terms of the fire department looking at access turnaround, the police department looking at, understanding that there's crash history in the neighborhood. All of those things come to light in the code review discussions. So I think we kind of do that, but we do it interdepartmentally. I
Right.
will say that, to give Chick-fil-A as an example, when that came in early, our engineering department was, even pre-code review, our engineering department was part of that conversation.
Right.
And the applicant really, really understood, hey, this wasn't their first go around, right,
Mhm.
for municipalities. So they asked for pre-meetings with engineering and with plan and zoning to talk through the zoning regulation requirements, what engineering was going to be looking at more specifically in terms of, the traffic requirements, the counts, the queuing, even DOT, even though they can't really go to OSTA before, before they get their approval for the town. I know that they had pre-conversations with OSTA as
Yeah.
well. So any applicant that is effective
Mhm.
and their engineering,
They typically kind of
they
do that.
typically
They
will do
know.
this anyway, yes.
Could,
You have
Commissioner Ralph, you're-
Commissioner Monahan too.
you're past your time, Commissioner Rao. Oh, yeah, I wasn't taking my, so Commissioner Delgado?
I just got a few thoughts. I think, generally I'm gonna defer to the staff and the resident experts. But I was thinking about like the way that the parking needs assessment and the TIA or TIS interplay. And, if we were to entertain what Commissioner Monahan and Commissioner Braun are talking about with a unit count, I would think it would make sense to just align with our parking needs assessment that is triggered on 17 units currently in the regulations. The kind of other thought I had was just about, in the city of Bridgeport, we have a process called design review that's required for any residential use introducing 4 or more units. And typically, larger commercial developments will have to go through that process. And so it's like, it seems like if code review was required in specific situations, maybe as opposed to scoping or some type of intermediate option, then, it could make sense to talk about a lot of these issues during that, as opposed to scoping just with engineering, and identifying these things, or maybe that just is code review. But consider whether maybe that's a requirement that's in the regulations under dictated scenarios. And that's all I got.
Commissioner Monahan?
If we are not very specific in our regulations and we turn down an application, are there grounds to appeal and sue us to ensure that that development is built? So the goal of what we've added here is really to say, are we really protected as a town? We are becoming, traffic's bad and it's getting worse. Flooding of streets, getting bad, getting worse. Developments approved, not yet built. Road diets, creating more and more traffic up and down the post road specifically. So, we're at a time, right? We're a college town. We have, 15,000 college students in town. Our traffic at different times of the year, it's different, right? It's different right now in the middle of the summer if you walk around the downtown than it is come September, October, November, February, March, April, and if we have snowstorms, et cetera. So I think to say that it would be unrealistic, first I'm going to say, I think it's unrealistic to say that we can't go back to an applicant to say you submitted a plan here based on data from a time of year that really isn't the time of year that you should be looking at, to Commissioner Capozzi's point, that anyone in their right mind would know that the data is not that it's obsolete, it's just not real. And so, to go back, I understand the timing, the 35 days, the 65 days, the delays, et cetera. But for us to say, oh, they're on a timeline and therefore we can't ask for any more, I think that's negligent on our behalf. So that's number one. Number two, I think that, Commissioner Delgado uses the 17 units. I would argue that under, 25-1, we need to reduce that number. So I think, the reason that we put the 40 or more parking spaces and the 15 or more development or more residential developments in our kind of red line was very specific. Also, the town of Westport kind of did a lot of heavy lifting on this as well. And we went through line by line, again, multiple towns. So there would have to be a reason to say, well, Westport wasn't good enough. And I personally think they're a little bit more forward thinking when it comes to this topic. They have a lot more construction happening. They have a lot more commercial development on the Post Road, in and around Riverside Avenue, Wilton Road, et cetera, and it's properly managed. So I think it's a very positive thing to take a cue from them in terms of their regulations to say, hey, this is a big topic for us. It's enforceable there. It's kind of helped them. We should take a cue to that and make our restrictions very specific so that even if we have a scoping meeting, even if we're sued, that we can go back to, well, it's in our regs, you knew it, and we are going to have problems as a result of it, and we laid it out ahead of time. So I also think that when we look at, I just want to point to one of the things that we added was for projects requiring excavation. I mean, right now we have some significant projects that are coming down the pike. I've yet to see a study that says, or any sort of plan to say, how will traffic be mitigated on Uncle Road in the next couple of months? And what are the ramifications of that? There's also significant flooding in certain streets, including that. So to add the impacts during construction here, I think not to take it out, to reinforce it, to say, that's part of the plan. We want to know, how are you going to direct school buses? How are you going to direct traffic? How are you going to direct, people walking, riding their bikes, riding their e-bikes in a particular area? And I think it should be, especially during peak times, when people also need to get to work, the train station, and so on and so forth. And so
30 seconds, Commissioner.
Yeah, so I also think that when we looked at the baseline traffic models, we talked about baseline traffic models. If we have developers coming to us, if we have traffic experts coming to us with certain models, Frank, does it make sense for you to also have those models and to integrate whatever they're using into your kind of, database? Is there a certain financial plan that you need to say, I need to come up to speed to make sure I have all this cumulative data in one place, versus, I don't know how it's stored now, but I think that information would be really important and useful also to future applicants and current applicants. So.
Could you want to respond to the question?
Yeah. So that is useful to have. Right now, we're trying to build out a GIS layer where it's stored. Some of the other models I was talking about are more specific to whatever software they use to analyze the traffic, which we don't necessarily have. So I wouldn't need those files. It's more the data itself that we're looking for. Because then, to your point, not only can we use it, but if we're in a code review or a scoping meeting and someone comes in and they say, we're looking at developing here, and we know there's another development right down the street that we have the data for, it behooves us to share that with them and have them include it in their model as well. As far as the impacts during construction goes, I totally agree with you. I think this is what we're trying to get at with this is, trying to give us a little more, control over what happens during construction and how they're looking at it. Because that's a whole different traffic generation on its own during construction. Depending on what's being built, you have a lot of large trucks, you might have a crane offloading stuff, there's people walking. So I agree. I think one thing we might want to just take a closer look at is, you mentioned substantial excavation or demolition or foundation work. We have to figure out how to define that, I
You
think.
get in trouble.
That
if
it's a
you
little,
use
it's
if you use a
vague.
loose term like that. that doesn't have a threshold.
So-
That's
so
my
I-
concern.
I guess, I am in agreement with you. We need to look at this. I think we need to figure out how to define that though, just to tighten up the language.
Because if this commission says, oh, that's one dump truck. And our fill and excavation says it's 250 cubic yards, I think we have a conflict within what we consider a threshold within our own regulations, and I think we would have to have some level of clarification, because I think that inherent conflict between those two sections, that's where I think we could get legally in trouble a little bit.
So does, because a TIS and a TIA never addresses construction means and methods. Those are two things entirely separate. They both
Correct.
have the word traffic in them, but that's about the only similarity. So you mentioned that is there a requirement for a traffic safety staging plan someplace?
That's what we're talking about
In
adding.
our ordinances, in our town ordinances.
I don't believe
I
so.
think it's a good point, but I just don't think this is normally, this is about new construction. It's not about, it's the impact when new construction's completed. It's not about
During.
staging, emergency.
Yes, the traffic impact study and the impact assessment is when it's built. It has nothing to do with what goes
How it's
from
built, yeah.
today to then.
Yeah,
But if it's gonna be-
That's why we need something like.
it's a good point, but I don't think it lives here, because this is a whole different.
I think it should, because I think it's a reason to deny something if it's going to be dangerous to build. And if it's going to be difficult to actually build it. If to have something in our regulation saying you can't do that, you can't completely disrupt a particular area of town
I-
just for your project.
I think that a contractor, I mean, you look at the work that goes on in London, okay? I'm gonna skip from Manhattan to London. If you've ever seen a building go up in London, you look at it and you're like, how on earth do they build this thing? You can build anything, anywhere safely, okay? And I'm picking London because it's a very safe place that they're very, so I don't think this is, I think requiring a construction plan is a good idea. It's just, it's a different topic than what we're trying to address here. And I think
But it's not, Commissioner, because we're not London and we
No, no,
have
no, I'm saying
two-way
it's a-
streets versus.
It's a totally different, it's a different, I'm agreeing that we should have, I'm agreeing with you, but it doesn't reside in here, and I'd send it back to staff to say, where should it reside? And what should we add? I'm not disagreeing with you, but this is about existing buildings and the impact. A TIS and a TIA are about traffic volume, traffic movement. It's not about construction or staging. That's usually
Yes.
addressed.
These projects can take 2 years. So for
I'm
a
not-
2-year
I'm not
period.
I'm not disagreeing with you,
Yeah.
but it belongs in a different part of the ordinance, and I'd ask staff to say where else that would fit safely.
Right,
Maybe
did
we
you have
can
something that-
cross-reference it, but keep it here and cross-reference it in another section.
I don't know that we had it in the zoning regs. I would have to go back and look. We typically required it, and then as a department,
Usually the
we
building,
had our own we came up with a standard for maintenance of protection and traffic for construction that included, staging and stuff during
Safety plan.
construction. So it was like, we always got it with the application for the most part. And if it wasn't done in zoning, it was done at the building application.
building
So
application.
it's just typically where we got the final, but we would raise concerns during the
And so,
zoning as well. I would have to go and look to see if, I don't
Yeah.
know that it was in
And
the zoning regs.
and I wonder whether we're going to have
I could find that.
problems with putting it in the zoning regs,
It doesn't
because
belong in the zoning regs.
then to enforce it, I have to send out my zoning enforcement officer,
Not in the zoning regs. It's
who
a
has
building-
no
building.
jurisdiction over public right of way
Mhm.
in the same manner. So it almost seems like a police power, or, I mean, I'm just not sure. I mean,
No,
it's a good question.
I'm not disagreeing with the
But
issue.
who's responsible for enforcement
Yes.
in that realm? Is what I would say, and maybe it is an ordinance question.
So I think we can, I think it's a good question. It needs to be addressed, but right now this is about the TIS and TIA are about the impact of traffic from a building that's constructed, which is clearly within our jurisdiction.
We did also have Yeah, that letter H did kind of touch on it though, without the further modification. Let's say applicant shall provide a summary or plan of the traffic impact study to address potential impacts during construction, including construction, vehicle access, employees and subcontractor parking, and impacts to adjacent streets, sidewalks, and neighborhoods.
Okay, well, let's send that
The
one,
proposed included the substantial excavation part.
let's send that one back to staff to.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
Can we go back to the other thing that I had mentioned about asking them to go back and look at recounts at an appropriate time of year? Unless it's in our regs, are we permitted to do that? Or is that, you know, kind of subjective? They say, well, we think what we have is sufficient. If it's not in our regs for you to ask for that, is it legal or is it, you know, for that to be even asked?
Let me throw this out since I've got personal experience with this. It is not defensible to do that. What we can do is require that the best standards be applied, which would be the ITE standards, which account for factors. So if we ask for something that's not consistent with ITE, we'd likely be open to an appeal that we would lose because we're imposing something that's unreasonable. That's my from personal experience, that's my interpretation, but I'd like to, I mean, how, why don't you explain how they address seasonality?
And then also look to what Westport has already approved on this topic.
I was gonna say, I mean, it is what they have in their regs, basically. I mean, you know, like I said, we typically do that in that pre-application phase, but we don't have a, you know, necessarily formal scoping meeting spelled out.
But there are ITE factors that look at
Yes.
this, so.
Yes, you can get that, look at the time of year that you can adjust.
So ITE specifically says time of day, day of week, and time of year, and then they apply safety factors.
So once again, it's something we look at. The question is, do you need it in the actual reg itself or not?
It's a good question, and I agree with you.
It is a good question.
But the ITE is it's been around for 100 years and they address this question.
I think because we're a unique town and we have certain traffic patterns at different times of the year. And if someone was going to be hired by a developer to do a study, and you know, this is, you know, it's common practice that these, you know, engineers who are doing these traffic studies are only allowed to work for businesses and not municipalities or individuals. You know, some of them won't take your project. So they're only looking to work for a developer. So why wouldn't we be more restrictive with them to say it needs to be at an appropriate time of the year when, you know, or 2 times of the year, use their, you know, one study to say, well, I mean, I'm not sure what's legal, what's not legal, but having someone in July do a traffic study is not the same as doing a traffic study in the 7 or 8 other months of the year when traffic is 3, 4x.
I think Director Harrigan wants to address it.
Unfortunately, Commissioner Monahan, state statute is very clear about how much time, when an applicant submits an application, they have a time frame that applies to that application.
Yep.
And we don't have the ability to tell them, you have to wait 7 months to provide additional information. They legally have an expectation for how long the town can process their application. And I don't foresee that this regulation would be legal for us to waive their time frame that's dictated by state law.
Yeah, and so
Well,
let me.
I'd love to say something. I've had my hand up.
Sure, go ahead, but let me just specifically ask Director Batiste. So I know seasonality is something contemplated by the ITE. Could you please come back to us with an explanation of how seasonality is reviewed?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And perhaps we can pick certain months when you cannot do a traffic study in our town. Maybe that would be it out.
It probably depends on where in town you are too, because there's different peaks for different things. You know, like if you're looking in a school area, you're gonna want to do it not in the summer. If you're looking at something next to a beach where the peak is in the summer, you're gonna want to look at it during the summer. So just kind of like looking at the first sentence that was added to letter Q, where the town engineer may require the applicant to conduct counts during a representative time of year to apply the documented multi-factor consistent, like, I don't, looking at this on the fly, like, I wouldn't have an issue with that, because I think that's what we do when we look at the study anyway. I think that just, maybe instead of saying reconduct, just say conduct, like, that's what you're supposed to do on the front side. To
Then
address
they
the
know
time.
going in that there's an expectation.
Commissioner Zablak's turn, so I think we've hit this, and I think it's a good question, and I think Director Patisse has his question, and he's gonna bring us an answer. So I think it's a good question. It comes up all the time. Commissioner Zablak, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Commissioner Monahan. My sentiments exactly. I'm so concerned about these traffic studies. They're going to be done by a really slick, smart applicant. They'll just go ahead and do their traffic study at the lowest time that they possibly could. Or they would, Director Harrigan mentioned, well, we only have a certain amount of time and we have to act on their application. So why wouldn't these people look at these regs and say, you know what? Let's do this. If we apply on this particular date and they want a traffic study, we can't necessarily do it, or they can't make us do it, and we could get this just skimmed right through. So I think the traffic study, I think in a perfect world, the traffic study should be done at peak anytime somebody wants to get something done. And I don't know whether that's legal, but I think that's the right way to do it. Then we don't have to worry about it. And it's unfortunate for somebody who wants to make an application in July when the peak is in December and they don't have a traffic study. They're gonna have to wait till December, and that's that. They don't go, they don't.
They won't. But I think the reality is, unfortunately, we can't dictate that. I don't.
You can't
believe that's-
dictate to do a traffic study at peak time and always have it at peak.
We can't, so again, I'm happy to ask for an opinion from Attorney Piers on this, but when an applicant submits an application to you, you are legally obligated to process it within the time frame dictated by state law. So I don't think that we have the ability to say, well, I'm sorry, you've submitted during a wrong time of the year.
No, you're not saying that. You're just, listen, they just have to, if they want to submit something in July and the peak time is in December, they should have known they were going to do that in December and got their traffic study and submitted that when they do it in July.
No, I think when you're looking at an application, it is of course valid to express all of these concerns. That, they did their traffic study during a period when you don't believe it to be a peak. And then it would be that traffic engineers, it would behoove them to make whatever adjustments that are allowed within ITE to represent what those peak traffic flows would be during that time period. And then eventually, if you still don't agree with that traffic impact study and you feel like there will be adverse impacts related to this project, it is up to this commission to approve or deny a project, but we can't delay them. That's not within our legal authority to delay them when state law gives them and guarantees them a time frame for processing. That's what I'm trying to express.
Is there an ethical conduct that these whoever does these traffic studies has to abide by?
They're licensed professional engineers per these regulations.
Yeah, so let me, Commissioner Zablak, do you have any more questions? Because I think it's my turn to talk, and I can address some of these
You have
questions.
some commissioners who wanna speak on
Yeah,
that.
Well,
my
we're taking-
question
we're
wasn't
taking
answered, but
turns.
yeah, go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
go ahead. What's your question? So I can answer your question, and maybe it's something we could put in here. So I understand the skepticism about, if you will, engineers being paid, but it's a very generally ethically bound group, and there is something called a professional transportation engineer certification. Would it be onerous for us to ask for our reports to be prepared by a PTE? Think about it.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay, so engineers, especially traffic engineers, it's a thankless task, but there is a specific subsector of PTEs. We could specifically ask for that possibly, but I don't know how wide that designation is, but, so that's one. The second thing is, commission, we might reserve the right for the commission to conduct a peer review of the report. So that would give us a little bit of a backstop
Mhm.
to, because I think we have pretty good traffic engineers presenting to us in my, almost 2 years here. So I think we've got pretty good, but we could put an opportunity for the commissioners to request a peer review. Now, the question is, where do we get the money for that? But we'll let,
No, we adopted that fee.
Have that for anything else
We did.
already?
Yeah, we adopted that we're allowed to,
Okay.
at the applicant's expense.
The applicant pays, correct?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, we added that to our regulations.
okay, so I think that probably would address a lot of the, if you will, skepticism about the objectivity of the, of this, but I just want to go back and say, I appreciate the thoughtful conversation. Traffic is one of the biggest issues, but it is highly technical. But we are not the first ones ever to address these questions, and there are professional standards that address seasonality. I think Director Patisse is going to come back and explain some of those to us. But this is not the first time these questions have been asked or answered. I understand your skepticism because it is technical and it is the developer's representative who's preparing the report. A couple of other things that have come up is in the notes that I think are just generally, and these are my summary comments. Commission discretion. I think we should really limit commission discretion for a few reasons. One, this is a technical matter. Two, it leaves us open to lawsuits because we'll have a non-expert opining on an expert review on sightlines, on traffic volume. So I think that we should, it has been stated earlier by many commissioners, get the rules down, and the rules are best established by reference, not writing them in here. And I know we're pointing to Westport, and Westport's a more affluent town, but I think I think their level of rigor here is a lot less than ours. The best way to do things is refer to standards. The engineers know standards. I see in here rejecting something on service level D, that would be thrown out immediately. That's not a state standard. We would, if we rejected something on a service level D, it would not sustain, so, which is what Westport has in here. So I think we need to make sure the standards are objective. They're related to CT dot standards. That's probably the best one we could look at. And there's some comment in here about overriding OSTA. We cannot do that. That's just not a good idea. So that's what I had as my summary comments. So Commissioner Compose, anybody raising their hands? Go ahead. Commissioner Braun, did I see your hand up? Commissioner Monahan? Go ahead.
Oh,
So what would be the trigger for this additional kind of peer review study? That's number one. Number two, I do think it's important, for example, where we have on point E, on the application where the Fairfield Police Department, Fire Department, or Health Department has raised a public safety concern for access or circulation have been identified by either the Fire Department or the Police Department in the pre-application code review process, the TIA or TIS shall address the resolution of such issues. And we added public safety concern during code review, the engineering department review of the traffic impact study, or the traffic impact assessment shall address in writing how the concern has been resolved and why it has been declined, and shall place in writing on the record before the commissioners vote on the application. We should know that in advance. So if they've satisfied it, they've satisfied it. If they haven't, they haven't, before it comes to us. So you know, the things that we've added here are not meant to be onerous. They're just meant to be very specific and also complete, so that there's no question when someone comes forth with an application that could be dangerous to build, create significant traffic, follow a little loophole in terms of not triggering exactly the right kind of count. You know, I think we could look at in terms of time of year, for example, to be very context based. We could say beach traffic, right, cannot be done during the winter months. That school traffic cannot be when school is in recess. We can just establish certain parameters to say this is our expectation. And so I don't think we're going to be sued on that. I think we're just essentially saying, don't come to us with a study in February for a beach project. So, and the expectation is then don't file your application with that information because it will be turned down.
We cannot prohibit an applicant from submitting an application. We can't.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But the expectation will be that
You
the
have
data
every
needs
right
to
to
be
deny
timely.
them if you feel like they haven't submitted sufficient information. But I just want to be clear, we cannot prohibit
We
an
don't want to be
applicant and
here
say,
to
come back in
deny.
6 months.
We don't want to be here to deny. We want to be here to approve, provided it should be approved. So,
If they have financing limitations, contract limitations, where they have to submit within the next month, we can't tell them, come back in 6 months. We do not have that legal right.
okay, I'd like the town attorney to opine on that.
I'll have him review it.
Okay.
Commissioner Braun? Go ahead.
So this is the whole reason we're here. What we can require of an applicant and why we should do it. It's not the normal course of what we've been doing for the last, I've been here 6 years, 7 years. It's changing now, and we're going to lose a lot of discretion. So when Vice Chairman Randolph says we don't want discretion, we're not going to have discretion on a lot of projects. It's going to be summary review, perhaps as of right review, meaning no review. As of right means it doesn't even go to us. It goes directly to the staff. A summary review means we see it, but we have zero discretion. We cannot impose conditions. We cannot require a special permit. We just said you to check all the boxes. So, and there will be no public hearing. So there will be many applications we'll be getting that won't have a public hearing. We won't have that competing traffic consultant who says, oh, this was wrong. You didn't add this the right way. You used the wrong seasonality, whatever. So that's why we need the specificity here so that we can tell the people ahead of time. We can't tell you when to apply. You pick your time frame. We can tell you what we need. And it's up to you to figure out how you're going to do that. So we're not going to go back to you and stretch out your time frame. We can't. But you can decide when you're applying based on your own needs. It's not really my problem that your financing or your contract says you have this amount of time. We just had a gentleman come to us 5 times to try to get offsite affordable housing. Yeah, he lost a lot of deals, unfortunately, because we turned him down. That's not really analogous, but it is not our problem that somebody else has to follow our regulations, and they might have a contract that says you have to buy the property in 6 months, and that's the wrong time of year to do the proper traffic study. It should be in our regulations. That's the whole point. We need it in our regulations now with that amount of specificity so that they know ahead of time what they need. Now, what I don't know is, I don't know if we can require a scoping review. I know we cannot require the code review, which again is an informal, voluntary, unenforceable group meeting with town departments to give tips and advice and guidance on what works and what doesn't work. I don't know if we can do a scoping review. That's something the town attorney can help us with. Also, polling, suspending the deadlines. It would be nice to hear from the town attorney on that. I don't see anything we're doing as allowing that, which is again why we need it in the regulations ahead of time.
So I think we.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple other points, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was just going to point out excavation. I just went through the excavation regulation that we have. It doesn't focus on construction logistics. It focuses on environment and, you know, we don't require a permit for over 250 cubic yards. So I'm gonna ask, Ms. Harrigan, is 250 cubic yards something you would consider substantial?
Yes.
How many, is that like 250 tons? Is that like the same amount of tons as
Well,
yard?
it's approximately about 18 to 20 dump truck loads of fill.
Okay, okay.
So that is significant, like especially in residential neighborhoods. So to be honest, like we've had residential projects with a teeny tiny corner of wetlands in the corner of their property where
Mhm.
they've brought in 20,000 cubic yards of fill. And because we have this exemption in our regs, we weren't able to look at it. So, you know, like I think this is something that we should tighten up. And I think that the construction related requirements, looking at number of trips, looking at staging, looking at excavation, maybe there's another threshold that we need to put in there. And maybe that's a place to be able to request that kind of staging information to some degree. But I do have concerns about enforcement in the public right of way, because normally that's not the jurisdiction in which my zoning enforcement officers have the right to issue enforcement orders.
Well, okay, so could you explain that a little bit? Because we don't really see it from that end very often. But with the police, you know, public safety deals with traffic, but we deal with zoning regulations that are violated, right? So if we put some kind of a construction plan out there that they have to follow and they're not following it somehow, can't we do a cease and desist from our end? We can't take them off the road, but we can order a cease and desist that they then have to either comply with or go to court.
I think we would have to work with the police department on language that we could be comfortable with.
So-
I think it's a legitimate issue. The
Yeah.
question is it within our authority? And I think the question's been raised and I think staff will come back with an answer.
Well, I just want to point out that the excavation reg does not talk about construction or logistics. It's primarily more or less an environmental reg. So
Right.
we're talking here about
I
the
think it needs
logistics.
to be addressed for sure.
But
And
we've had- Right, just,
your point's made.
right, well,
And I think we have to give staff a chance to come back and address
I-
this.
I agree with that. I just want to remind everyone, we've had many applications, especially for 830Gs, where the number of trips of, you know, of fill was a significant issue, and that does need to be dealt with.
Commissioner
And
Braun,
we- Yep, and
finish your
these-
point, please.
the construction plan, so are you opposing? Because it's already in here, we just added some content to that. It's already in here in the regulation, the proposed regulation. Potential impacts during construction, we just added substantial excavation, structural demolition, foundation work. They have to submit construction logistics plans identifying trip generation, haul routes, staging areas, hours of operations for review by DPW, town engineer,
I don't
Fairfield Fire
think-
Marshal.
Commissioner
Is there
Braun,
an objection to that
I don't think
level of-
anybody's disagreeing with you that this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, it
but-
should be here, not in the excavation
but
section.
I think let's leave it to staff to determine where that's best placed.
Well, I think we need to determine where it goes. We're the ones drafting the regulation.
I would disagree with you. I think staff is the one who owns this document. The
We own the document. We're adopting the document.
implementation of the document and the rules, and they need to make sure that it's properly placed in the ordinance. And I think your point's well made, and I agree with it. But
Right, I just,
let's
right, so,
let's give it back
okay,
to
so,
staff to try to come back with an answer for us, okay?
well, that's fine. Guidance is good. It's always good, but it's up to us ultimately to determine what we need.
Not to implement though. We don't know if we have the police power to implement. That's the-
We need their, yes, certainly we could use their information. And, well,
So, Commissioner Braun, I think you're, if you wanna,
How many minutes do you have, Kathy?
she's already done her 5 minutes.
I made that point. I'll wait to make my next point. Somebody else can speak.
So I think
I have a point.
my sense is we're continuing to address the same questions. So if we have any new questions or issues, I think we've given staff good direction on this. But if there are any new questions that come up, please raise those. But we have other items on the agenda, and I think, do we open to public comment?
Yes.
one person.
Okay, so go ahead. Commissioner Monahan.
We also didn't talk about the interconnected parking and shared access. As this becomes more prevalent, right? Where people
where
are
is
sharing.
that? And where-
It's S under 25.14.4, item S. Interconnected parking and shared access. We don't have this in our regs and we should. Westport has it in their regs. I thought about this a lot and I think especially given, you know, the parking, shared parking, parking in lieu, et cetera, I think it's something that we should make sure is integrated into our traffic, regulations. And it specifically reads the project design shall consider interconnected parking areas, shared common access drives, and future access connections to adjacent property. The project shall be designed to minimize left turn movements. And I know, Jeff, left turn, that was a big thing that you had pointed out in prior meetings, or conflicts on the adjacent street at site access points. And I think that is something we should absolutely add. Frank, what is your thought on that?
We have it in our structure.
I'm in favor of, looking at shared access, definitely. I think it reduces conflict points. It's both safer for pedestrians and more, commercial areas where you have, one driveway to cross instead of, four. I'm in favor of it. As far as, I'll defer to Director Harrigan. I don't know where it lives in the regs. Do we have?
Within section 25, it's within our off-street parking and loading section. So it's already within that section.
Something about
Yeah,
that.
so
in there?
let's give that back to staff. I think we all agree that that's a good add. The
Yeah.
question is where it lives. and
I
whether
don't
it's-
believe it's there, so please don't just use that as a guide. I looked at it and I think it needs to be separated.
I'm not questioning. I think the intent of what you're saying, we all agree with. I'd like to give this back to staff to basically suggest they review it and see whether it's complete or thorough. We all agree that shared access has not been looked at historically in town. So I think we agree with the concept. The question is, where does it go? And I think we'll ask staff to get back to. Go ahead, Commissioner Quasi.
Well, to Commissioner Monahan's point about the interconnected parking and shared access, my understanding is that Westport has like baked into their regulations allows for the number of spaces to be credited based on it's not just on a surface level on one area. It flows through multiple regulations in terms of developments, and if one development leases spaces to another or they share the parking lot, then that impacts the overall development and the approval. So I agree that that's something that I would definitely like to see, but does that need to run deeper through the regulations on several commercial levels, not just on a traffic study?
We have that, if I could just speak to that, this is within section 25.8 and section 25.9 of our off-street parking and loading section. So there's a whole section on shared access, and it does speak to what Commissioner Capozzi referred to. We do allow, if we have two property owners that are providing joint access, we do waive some parking spaces in order to achieve that goal. We also do allow joint usage. We reviewed that when we modified our parking regulations in March, and we actually extended the distance for joint usage for parking lots from the former 500 feet to 1,000 feet. So we have both of those provisions within off-street parking and loading, page 95 of our zoning regulations. It's a whole page that speaks in more detail about that.
But it doesn't, we're not specific to traffic and how construction would impact
Yeah, so
traffic flows.
just
So that's why I'm just saying, I think it just needs to live here.
my half-informed interpretation of this is by putting interconnection into here, you're asking to evaluate the movement of traffic, which I think would be in traffic impact assessment, which is important. I agree with you, but in terms of encouraging shared use, that is a parking issue more than a traffic issue. And I know it sounds like a too narrow of a refinement, but I'd ask staff to come back and just, I think we can't emphasize enough shared parking and interconnection. It's really important, and I think it's what's going to address a lot of our ongoing problems. But let's just ask staff to take a look at it. I think your point is well taken. But let's ask, and I think your objective, there's two things. One is to encourage that, and the second is it safe?
I'm not encouraging shared parking. I'm not encouraging commercial businesses to give up their already limited parking spots to neighboring businesses. I'm not encouraging that. If they want to do it, great. But I don't think it's something that we as a commission should be encouraging to say that someone should be reducing their parking for residents to use, for employees to use, et cetera, and share it with the neighbor. So I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying it exists now. And in the situations where it does currently exist, we should make sure that it's integrated into our traffic study.
So I think a TIA looks at traffic movement on site and within the perimeter of the site. So I believe this is addressed in the TIA. But let's give this back to staff to confirm that.
And I think if, we do confirm it's in there already, I'll defer to you, but maybe we just reference it in this section, so rather than move it, just say, see section, however we word it, 25.8 for
Right, if
shared
we
parking.
want to say,
We can put language in this section that we encourage it and refer to the other
because
section.
because I think we can actually even address it with, it does address it within this section too. I think if you're using joint usage parking space, we have something in there that says that they need to show pedestrian access from one lot to the other. If we are using shared access for a driveway, for example, that's something that has to be demonstrated and shown on the plans. So if this is really just dictating circulation,
Mhm.
I think that's fine. I don't know if we want to reference back and say, if either of these options allowed by section 25.8 or 25.9 is provided, then they also have to show that circulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Commissioner Braun,
Yeah, so I have a
hang on.
question.
Yeah, hang on. So if we could make sure you cover new topics, I'm just asking that politely.
Yeah, I have a follow-up on that.
ahead.
So basically, because we might not have the ability to do anything other than say, yeah, you checked all the boxes for the traffic report, it's really engineering that's doing the job. And so if engineering determines that, for example, in a shared parking arrangement, there's no safe way for pedestrians to go between the parking lots, does engineering then turn it down? Is that our anticipation? Engineering or DPW can then turn down the traffic report as failing the safety requirement? How is that going to work?
I think they could require a sidewalk
I
in.
think, I think you
right?
require it, make them, they have to build it.
Because it's not us. By the time it gets to us, you've already reviewed it. So we're just saying it's been reviewed, and we could actually request a peer review if there's time, right? But other than that, there won't be any, most of these applications I'm talking about, not regular applications, but the ones that don't have a public hearing, there won't be an opposing traffic expert to poke holes in it. So it's really going to come down to you.
But practically what would happen, and traffic is flow, it's water, and it's very similar to water. If we say the pipes aren't big enough, if the engineering department says the pipes aren't big enough, just like for stormwater or, similar to wetlands, if the engineering groups reject it and they send it to us with all sorts of qualifications, then that's where our discretion comes in. We say, well, our professionals have said that the traffic impact analysis or the traffic impact study does not deliver the level of service, or the applicant hasn't agreed to make the signal timing changes, improve the intersection, whatever the recommendations were, then we have a basis to reject it. But if there's no objective standard for us to reject it, that's when we potentially would be subject to appeal.
But I think the DPW town engineer needs to give us its own certificate of compliance or something like that.
ideally, I mean, I would love to see a world where we got an engineering review letter, and I think that's my request to you. That
That's
we-
another request for
that
the
we-
town
that we-
attorney.
that we get an engineering review letter from
Yeah.
from DPW on these traffic impact studies. We don't just get it and read it because they're complicated.
Yeah.
They're stupid complicated. We get some type of cover page that says,
So we should.
this is good.
Yeah.
This is not good. This is good if, accept, reject, make corrections noted.
Yep.
No. I mean, that would be my perfect world. We get these engineering studies back and the qualified people read them because they're, hundreds of pages many times. And they're complicated. And, this notion of a level D being a rejection, that would never stand, right? Frank, we could never reject anything on level D.
Well, for that one, I would be reluctant to
We could.
do
I mean,
that.
it's not,
There's stuff that's already at a D
Right.
already.
Right.
It might still be within a D. Sometimes you sacrifice that level of service a little bit for safety. So I wouldn't,
Yeah. I mean,
that one in particular, I wouldn't want
I mean,
it.
that's just not defensible. I'm sorry, Commissioner Monahan, go ahead.
So what happens if it's not in the text, there's no commissioner review, and it doesn't come before us? Also subjective in terms of the interpretation, and, I'd like to think that you'll be in office for a long time, but I think the regulations need to be very specific so the text survives. So if a lot of things are not going to be coming in front of us, under the new housing bill. So if it doesn't come before the commission and we don't have a chance to review it, and it's not in the text,
Mhm.
then what?
If
Yeah.
I may, before every building permit, our engineering department gets a sign off. Before that building permit can be issued. They get to determine whether or not a driveway location is acceptable to them. They issue a permit for a homeowner or a business for a curb cut, for example. And they get to refuse if they feel like that curb cut needs to be further away from an intersection, for example. They have that purview and they have that right. It's a street, is it still referred to as a street opening permit?
I believe so. Yeah.
So it's different towns call it different things,
Yeah.
but in order for a contractor or a homeowner to pour a driveway that intersects it with the public right of way, they need authorization from the town in order to do that. And that's the opportunity for our engineers and our engineering department to take a look at the location of that driveway and make an informed decision as to whether or not that's a safe location or whether or not it needs to be modified. If it's on a
And that-
state road, it's
I-
the same thing. The DOT will have jurisdiction.
And I understand you're talking about residential, but under the housing bill, there are going to be certain situations, and a lot of them that will come forth where we will not see these applications. That's why I'm asking that the text be very specific, so that if we don't see it, we know full and well that this is actually being adhered to before decisions are made.
But summary review, you're still seeing those applications. They're just site plan review applications. So you see all of the information that's included as part of an application. Right now, the only things that are quote unquote as of right that are reviewed by our zoning enforcement officer and agreed, it's 95% of what we process within town are single families, some of which can be 10,000 square feet in size, right? That have 6-car garages attached to them. We can also do duplexes as of right. That's been in our zoning regulations for a long time. Fourplexes as of right. That's been in our zoning regulations for a long time. The commission did add that allowance for a 5-unit within a B zone to be as of right for 15,000 square foot parcels, but that's a very limited number at this time unless property owners combine parcels together. So, outside of those 5 units and under, there's a lot that this commission is going to review and see, but some of it is going to be summary review. And then, by and large, a lot of the commercial projects are still public hearing items.
Yeah, and let me
A
just.
lot, but
let me-
not all.
Let me address the
Alright.
question of specificity. So the ordinances that are referred to, and there's a lot of them here, and I'm glad to see many of them, are voluminous. So the specificity, we're referring to the specificity by reference. If we tried to replicate even a small percentage of what's in these ordinances, our zoning ordinance would be, and that's how a lot of cities used to do it. When I was an architect in New York, I don't know if they still do, they had their own, Philadelphia, New York, Boston had their own ordinances, and they were phone books. If anybody remembers what a phone book is, but they were really, really long. The best practice now is to refer to a standard. We don't have our own building code. We refer to a standard building code. This similarly, we're referring to a set of traffic standards and a process that's nationally it's recognized by all 50 states. It's recognized by the federal government. That's what we're referring to, and that's where the detail is. If we tried to replicate that detail, we would never, you know, it would literally be impossible. So I think your concern about specificity is well placed, but the specificity is within the ordinances that are being referenced. That's why we referenced so many. And and thank you guys for looking at it and trying to understand why some were older, some were newer. And I think that was explained, but that's where really the meat of this is these ordinances that are in, I guess, 13C.
The objective standard is what makes us our rejection be able to survive an appeal.
Yeah,
So it needs
just
to be
to address-
specific, and this isn't voluminous. This is a couple of pages. This is a very big deal. I would argue that this is not a textbook. This is a couple of pages that you can skim to. You read it in 45 minutes or a half an hour before the meeting and went through it with detail. And you do this every day. These people do this every day. It's not a lay person looking at this. These are nothing that they haven't seen in other towns. We're just saying that we should identify the best of what these other towns do and integrate them into our regulations to better protect our residents. Not to also be working on behalf of developers, but also to say, how can we make sure that our town grows? We try to maintain some sort of, order with our traffic, and that, people know what's coming. Developers know what's coming, residents know what's coming, adjacent business owners know what's coming, and so on and so forth. So that's all I'm gonna.
I 100% agree with your intent. And what I was trying to clarify is that under this applicable standard section, that's where the substance of this is and will remain. And if we try to replicate the details that are in here, we'll fail, right? So that's why this list of incorporated, because we didn't have this before, did we? We never
Yeah.
wrote standards, yeah. So this is a giant step, and I don't think, you keep talking about other towns. We have the former director of Stanford, we've got the director of Bridgeport. I've worked in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. I've worked in much bigger places than this. And this is the approach that I've seen most effective before, is referring to standards. And I completely agree with your intent to be specific. And where it's accomplished is really incorporate applicable methodology and technical standards from the following documents. And by agreeing that we're going to look at ITE, that is a giant step, because as a commission, we need to agree on what standards there. And I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in where people say we're a snowflake. ITE doesn't apply. Oh, what did they study? Which is not legally defensible, because if you question ITE, you've got to come up with a better standard, and there isn't, I don't know of one. So I think the specificity that you're searching for, I completely agree with it. And the intent is to address it in this applicable standard section. Commissioner Huntley, Jeffson?
Importantly, we're not Stanford, we're not Philly, we're not Bridgeport, we're Fairfield. We're more like Westport than we are like Bridgeport. We're more like New Canaan and West Hartford than we are like Bridgeport and like we are like Stamford. And I think our residents would be insulted to say, let's take our zoning regs, let's take a cue from those quote unquote large cities in terms of what we should be doing here. Residents right now feel as though we're becoming those cities. And so to reference them in our regulations is something we should look to kind of, copy, emulate, et cetera, I think is the wrong message.
You're completely misconstruing the intent of what I'm saying. I'm saying we're using more sophisticated tools than towns like Westport, which is half our size. And there's some sophisticated people in Westport, but their zoning ordinance is not necessarily something that has the best practices. I think that what we have here reflects the best practices of a more complex and sophisticated place. I'm not trying to replicate Singapore, okay? That's not the intent of this, but by adopting standards that are here, and let me point to one of my favorite ones here is for the longest time, there was questions on some of our traffic calming measures, right? And by doing this, we can reference up to nationally recognized traffic calming measures, right? We had no reference to it before. We can recognize other methodologies that are legally defensible for evaluating traffic, which we didn't have before. So I'm not trying to make us look like a big city. That's entirely incorrect. I'm saying we should use the sophisticated techniques of larger places, Stamford and Bridgeport, and other places, rather than look at smaller places, which are not as sophisticated. Any other hands raised? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
So just getting back to mitigation. To identify what we're talking about when we were talking about mitigation, there are two places in the regulation, the proposed regulation under the section 25.14.4, but now it's 5, minimum requirements for consent content. And it says under K, evaluation and mitigation of impacts by the project and pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities. And under L, it says identification and evaluation of feasible mitigation measures necessary to maintain acceptable traffic operations and improve safety, including complete streets. So we added a section G to 25.14.6, basically saying mitigation threshold. And what we're saying is we should have some kind of standard. And it should be here in the regulation, not wait till later. And it should be there to notify people. It doesn't have to be service level D. It could be something else. And it could say there's an exception if you're slowing down traffic movement to put in a safety device like a light or a sign. That could be an exception to it to cover the concerns that we don't want to penalize people for making traffic slower to make it safer. We don't have to use Westport's figure of 0.8 not to exceed volume to capacity ratio. We could pick a standard, and I would ask some combination of Ms. Harrigan and Ms. Batiste to come up with some standard. We do need a standard because otherwise we're stuck with something that's subject to interpretation and we're not going to be able to interpret it. So I see our role in doing summary review as a step below our role when we do a compliance review under the Coastal Management Act. Under the Coastal Management Act, that too is kind of like a checklist. It's a compliance review. There's no public hearing. However, we're supposed to carry out the goals of the Coastal Management Act. So when we do a coastal site plan review, so we have much broader discretion, I believe, there than we do here. Here, my understanding of summary review is if it checks the boxes on our traffic report requirements or any of our regulations, then we don't have a choice. We certainly can't put conditions of approval on it, which we do repeatedly when we do coastal site plan reviews. So I would say, let's come up with something. Can we come up with something that makes sense for our town, for what we do, so we can have some standards for mitigation, for example? And that same logic would go to any of the other objective standards we're picking. Put them in now up front before we start getting the applications in. And I just want to point out one other thing. You know, we're not the same as Pennsylvania. They have so much. I just drove through Pennsylvania. It's like all farmland. I'm sure. I know there are cities and towns, but my word, you know, we're really not comparable to Pennsylvania or London or New York. You know, we're our own town. We're probably more comparable to Westport or Greenwich than we are to any of those. We're coastal communities subject to sea level rise, and that, you know, that affects things also. So I think I don't like drawing these parallels to far-flung areas that really have nothing to do with us. And then one other thing about I don't think we talked about the commission requested traffic impact study. This is, for me, kind of a red line. It absolutely has to be in there. I know in Westport, they have pretty much an unconditional thing. If the Westport zoning commission wants it, they're going to get it. We're putting a pretty restrictive thing in
I'm sorry,
here.
are you saying a peer review? Are you saying a peer review study?
No, I'm talking about when okay, I'll tell you where it is. It's in the regulation 25.14.3, but it used to be 0.2, requirement for traffic impact study. There's a section D that we were adding, okay? Which says commission requested traffic impact study or traffic transportation impact assessment. Nothing shall preclude the commission from requiring on the record at or before the opening of the public hearing on an application that an applicant provide either one of those studies where we make a specific written finding. And we try to put some restrictions on this. I prefer not to have restrictions, but to make it more amenable to people on this commission, that we would have to make a finding that documented site-specific conditions, including but not limited to on-street parking patterns, non-standard sightline geometry, crash history, complaints, Fairfield police or fire, would create a reasonable likelihood of a public safety impact not otherwise captured in the rest of the report.
I'm being told you have time now, Commissioner Braun, so I'm being told that your time is up.
I just started like 2 minutes ago.
I think.
Can I finish my sentence?
Please finish your thought and then.
And such information is necessary for the commission to render a fully informed decision. So even though we have very restricted rules, we should be allowed to ask for a study if the engineering department or the DPW does not require one. We must have that ability. And again, it's not denying an application, it's not putting conditions, it's simply seeking information so we can be fully informed.
Okay. This has been an excellent conversation and a lot of thought, and I appreciate Director Patisse, I keep saying your commissioner, coming in his evenings. Do we have any other hands up? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Monahan. Can we wrap this up? And then get to
I'd like to hear people's comments on what I just said, because last time there was pushback when I suggested we have to have the ability to require a traffic study if the engineering department does not.
Commissioner Monahan's turn to speak, so
Well,
go ahead.
No one's responding to me. I'd like to hear a response.
Commissioner Monahan, go ahead.
You're on mute. Still on mute.
Thank you so much. I'm finishing her comment on this. Why wouldn't we have this in our regs, Frank? Director Patisse, why would we not have this in our regulation? Why would we say we're going to take this out of our regulation and not allow us? We have very unique situations, and this may come up once a year, but not to have it in here and to say staff and you are going to handle it. That's against what we were voted in to do. So, and I believe that, including the very specific reasons we outlined, it's not so broad-based that you would say, oh, legally, you don't have a leg to stand on. You say, these are the reasons, and only under those reasons can we request, this information. So why wouldn't we have that in there? And if all of these other towns have not removed this, why would we as Fairfield decide to take that out of our commission's hands and not give ourselves that protection on behalf of our residents and our business owners.
As far as the commission requesting the traffic study goes.
Yeah. Requesting very specific information.
But it's not specific.
It is specific. We're saying on the record and before a public hearing of an application that the applicant provide a traffic impact study or a TIA where the commission makes a specific written finding that documents site-specific conditions, including but not limited to on-street parking patterns, non-site standard sightline geometry. We have a lot of crazy corners and intersections. Not everything is, diagonal and horizontal. Documented crash history, which, may go back not 18 months, but 3 years. And maybe there was a massive accident there 3 years ago and it's outside, the time limit. Or complaints from the Fairfield Police Department or Fire Department. Maybe they have issues in some way, shape, or form that we're not satisfied. Create a reasonable likelihood of a public safety impact. This is about safety. Not otherwise captured in subsections A or B, and such information is necessary for the commission to render a fully informed decision. How do you make a decision without all that information? And how does it actually legally survive an appeal?
Well, like I said earlier, I just saw this, language tonight, so it's a little difficult for me to say on the fly. I will say that, from the town standpoint, you have technical staff hired to review technical documents, so that's why I would defer to that. That's my opinion. I don't know. I don't know if that gets into the legal thing where if you're challenged, that could be an issue.
People make mistakes all the time, right? This is just another way to say, this is another level of protection to say, hey, we saw something you didn't, we found something you didn't. We're looking for a little bit more information before we render a decision. Not looking to turn something down, but just to make sure there's no health and safety issue for residents. That's all. Not to have that protection, to me, is like negligence on this commission's behalf.
But I think you really do have to have thresholds. I think this is where if you read some of the prior decisions that have come down, and, unfortunately, this commission has gotten sued a lot.
Yeah.
There are a lot of decisions in record. And so my caution to this commission is you cannot have a catch-all. You need to have specific guidelines for where you exercise discretion and where you can't. A catch-all is not going to be legally supported if you get challenged. And we've seen it on decisions time and time again. So I'm sorry that I'm cautious in this regard, but a lot of the decisions have not gone this commission's way. And it's been because we don't have something legally defensible that's a threshold. And so I hate to use this terminology, but if you rely on your technical license experts, but you don't believe their testimony, that does not hold up in court.
Yeah, and just
Okay.
to kind of back up to where this started. I wrote this a year and a half or 2 years ago in response to this commission questioning the legal standards and recognized engineering standards because I saw us having a big exposure and we've lost many cases by qualitatively assessing engineering standards. So the intent of this, and I think your intent is correct, but the intent of this is to set some standards that are recognized by the industry, recognized that are prepared by licensed professionals who have licenses that can be revoked, and they have insurance, professional liability insurance that are preparing these. And I know people are skeptical about developers, engineers, and we see a range of them, but they're generally a very ethical group of people. They're trained in ethics, and generally they're very ethical. There's always exceptions, but the intent of this is to create a recognized set of standards. And if we have this, if you will, trump card to say, well, we're going to ask you to do a traffic study, and a traffic study at TIS will take 4 months, 3 months.
Then just take out including but not limited to. And then that in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down in the middle, then it's very specific, right? So I agree with what you're saying. And from a being sued standpoint, just make it more specific. Just say site-specific conditions, on-street parking patterns, blah, 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 and you're very specific.
I
Like
think
these are legitimate safety things that we, if something comes up, we should have the right as a commission to ask for that. We should not say we
we ask-
relinquish control to ask for that.
we ask questions at the hearings, and we can reject something if we don't think something's been properly, that's our discretion. We can say that we don't believe the engineer. We don't think this was done correctly. We can send them back for a peer review, but by
Deny them without prejudice.
We can do that.
deny without prejudice, which we've done, right? To say, we deny this because you haven't given us a correct traffic impact study, but for us to create a trump card that overrides federal, state, and other peer, industry recognized standards, is what we're trying to.
But you're not doing that. You're not doing that at all. You're saying under these if something falls into these 4 categories, we may ask for this.
My
So,
concern is
Before we make a
there's probably
decision, not
12.
before we're sued.
Yeah, there's probably 12 categories. I think your 4 categories, I don't know. But the traffic engineers do. They study this, they're trained for it. So I agree with the intent, but I think let's rely on the professionals for guidance, professionals, staff in the town. And we have very good people working in the town. And then we have this, I think this notion of requesting a peer review might address your concern, because we could then deny without prejudice and then have request a peer review. Could we
But
do
the
that?
clock is ticking.
No, we would deny without prejudice, though.
You could always deny without prejudice if you feel like you don't have sufficient
Right.
information within the application in order to adequately make a decision.
Right.
That sends a signal to the applicant that you are okay to accept an additional application with more information or a revision.
Okay, well, do we have public comment? Do any more commissioner?
have-
Oh, sorry,
have-
go ahead, Commissioner Braun.
So what
And
about,
Please try not to, retread old ground.
what if we simplify it to what Westport has, which is at our discretion, we may require additional data and analysis, which we deem necessary to supplement, improve, and enhance the accuracy of the traffic data related to the application. Not a specific study, just something. We might want them to give another metric. And at that time, there would be a discussion over timeframes. Maybe a more general one would make more sense than having the specific here. And again, Commissioner Monahan just took out including but not limited to, just like 4 items that we could ask for. And this is only if DPW didn't ask for it or didn't require it, and we feel it's necessary stuff because of things we know about the area. So maybe we do what Westport has, sort of a general thing that we can ask for more data. And that is something that I know the Conservation Commission has it in their regulations. They can ask for more information. And, it might not come up in the pre-review, but it might be something that's what we're elected to do, protect our town. So we're the ones who make the decision. It's on us if we put something forward that we don't feel we have enough data on. And we should never shoot ourselves in the foot by removing our own authority. We have that authority now. We certainly do have the authority to ask for information.
I think Director
Okay,
Harrigan
and
would
we
like to
can't-
respond.
Can I finish first? Because
ahead.
I've heard what Director Harrigan said. She said this is a catch-all. It's not a catch-all. It's simply us requiring information that we feel is important.
I feel
We're the
like,
gatekeeper.
I feel
Can I
like,
finish my thought?
excuse me,
I
I
have
feel
only
like
spoken for 5 minutes.
we're getting repetitive here. So
No,
I think
we are
I
not
think you
here
made,
to
I think I made your point.
We
We're
have
the
5 minutes.
of our information, okay? We're the gatekeeper of our information. And I don't think Westport, I'd like to know, has Westport been sued over their regulation? And if we've been sued over our regulations where we request information, this is not a denial, this is requesting information.
I do think, again, if you go back and you look at the court cases, where we get chastised, I think, by some of the judges is where we, again, don't have a clearly defined threshold to request additional data, or the commission does not accept the data provided by a licensed professional who works within that area of expertise. So I tend to agree that if the commission disagrees with that professional expertise, it behooves the commission to get a peer review, because that's a licensed professional who is trained to study and analyze that data. That's where I think you have to be very specific. And it has to be data that contests data, not just opinion per se. It has to be data that contests data. And that's where I've seen in the decisions that have come down against the town where we've been a little bit vulnerable. It has to be data versus data.
But there's no data if they don't do a report and we want a report. There's nothing to do a peer review on. I'm saying if the peer review, if the report is not requested or required by engineering, we need to retain that power and authority that we have to request data, to request information we need. I don't see how you can be appealed based on the fact that you need information and they didn't supply it and you requested it. So why would we do a peer review? There's been no report submitted. This provision is here so we can require a report or data or information that we need, because whatever was provided is inadequate or incomplete or simply not done at all. That's up to us. That's what we need. We have to be the gatekeepers of what we need to make our decision.
Go ahead, Commissioner Capozzi, please.
But who is making that determination? That's the problem. That's the thing you get sued over, is because is not applying a standard equally under the law. If somebody comes in and one meeting and we decide we don't have enough information and we require them to go out and spend a fortune to generate a study, and then someone else comes in another area of town and at a different meeting, we're in a different mood, and we decide that, you know, the limited information they provided is just fine. We don't have a standard that's locked to. That's where we get into trouble, when it appears that we're arbitrary and capricious. If there's a specificity that it's tied to, and what Commissioner Randolph was saying is that there's certain national standards that we can point to in these regulations so that it's crystal clear, and there isn't you know, just based on a whim that the commission just decides on one day to do something one way and then on another day to do it a different way. Or if the electorate decides that the makeup of the commission in the next 2 years needs to change, and then the new commission applies standards completely differently than we did, that's where you get sued. It's the imprecise application of, we need more information because the sky is cloudy today. That's the problem. So these need to be defined and standardized so that there's a precedent upon which every applicant can rely and understand when they come before the Fairfield TPZ, this is what we need, this is the standard of evaluation, and it's always the same. It's, you know, the quarter pounder in Fairfield, Connecticut is the same as the quarter pounder in Los Angeles, California. It just, you know, when you go into McDonald's, you get that. That's the way the TPZ needs to be run. And we've seen court decisions where footnotes have called out commissioners on those issues. So we need to be careful.
I feel like that was a summary argument.
I agree we need to be
Yeah,
careful.
hang on, I think
Yeah.
Commissioner Monahan,
Okay.
and if we could wrap this up, I think we keep covering the same ground here, and
Well,
The points are well taken.
I
And-
agree with you that we don't want to get sued.
Hang on,
I
let
would
me-
appreciate
let
before
me-
the
let
next
me-
meeting,
let me
I would
finish.
appreciate, excuse me, I would appreciate before the next meeting, the cases that we were sued on outside of 830G applications that, that are traffic related specifically. If we turn down a development, a home, a building, because we made a decision about traffic and we were sued on it. I'd like to see that because I don't, outside of 830G applications, I don't know that information, and I would appreciate it just as a frame of reference. And I think it's important if we're citing not wanting to be sued, what exactly are the reasons that were cited by the judges that we were negligent in our kind of duties in creating kind of
Can we
this
just
document.
an-
Number
can
one,
we answer this question
number,
directly
number,
right now?
number.
You asked a
number-
question. You asked a question.
Yes.
What was the
That's,
case? With the
that's number
footnote where
two.
the judge-
What,
Hang on,
what are the
hang on.
cases?
Let me
Yeah,
answer your question right now. What was the case where we were cited for being capricious and not on traffic? What was the case? Was it
That was
Beach,
830G.
Beach Road?
It was Beach Road and
Beach
Burgundy
Road. So
Road.
Beach Road is your answer.
and
And it-
830J.
Yes, but we lost that case for this very reason. Okay, so
Right,
that's.
but
your-
No, we
But I'm
lost the
saying
case
we're
because of
in
830G. Sorry,
Right, court
That's
case.
why I asked for not 830G related kind of
I'm
applications.
not sure what.
Number
what
two,
difference-
that this is why when we talk about being sued, I think I agree with everything. I think it's great. You originally drafted this, you put this together, Jeff, Commissioner Randolph, I think it's great. I agree with you, Commissioner Capozzi, that we need to make sure that we draft this in such a way that it's rock solid, that we do not get sued based on it. That's why the 4 or 5 things we have in here that are very specific triggers should be cited, so that it's a hamburger is a hamburger from Fairfield to Westport to Darien to New Canaan and the like. And, so I think refining this and making it as tight as possible, but retaining the commissioner's authority to ask for additional information, like every other local town that we quote unquote compete with, that we align ourselves with, has maintained, is really, really important. To give that up is a huge mistake.
2 points.
I think we're on well-trodden ground. If you could keep it to 30
Okay, I
seconds,
have
that
to
would be great.
point something out because 830G has raised its ugly head in this meeting, in this hearing. 830G, we lose not just because we're not allowed to follow any of our own regulations, okay? We lose them because the burden of proof shifts from the applicant to the town. I don't know if, and maybe Commissioner Capozzi can correct me on this. I don't know of any other area of administrative law where if you file an appeal, the burden of proof shifts from you to prove they made a mistake to them defending their position when they can't even follow their own regulations. So that's the reason all towns lose around 3/4 of their 830G cases if they deny something. And I was actually involved in one of the very few 830G cases that was denied. I represented the neighbors. It went all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and the denial was upheld precisely because of traffic and flooding. Okay, so those are critically important issues. And this whole effort we're doing now is to create these specific standards. And there's nothing wrong with our commission requesting a report. Obviously, we're not going to do something stupid on the last day of the meeting, say go out and do a traffic report so we can get sued on appeal because we screwed your time frame up. Please give us a little more credit than that. This allows us to have the discretion we have now. Not every case that comes before us will be an 830G where the burden of proof is reversed. Okay. And, and we obviously will be following our own regulations. This is the regulation we're trying to pass. So all of the specific things we suggested about the different thresholds and standards, we can adjust those. We can tinker with them, but they have to be there. If they're not there, it becomes more amorphous and subject to interpretation. So to prevent, being sued over something vague that we interpreted one way, they interpret another way, we need to have those specifics. But we still have to retain our own power and authority to simply request data, request those 4 things we put in the list. That's kind of a red line for.
I think we're repeating ourselves and we understand your point. We're gonna keep this conversation open, obviously, because we don't have a final document to vote on. But I would, ask us to refer this back. to-
There's one important thing that we did not discuss, which was
Hang
fire
on,
and
hang on,
police who wrote
let
letters.
me,
Oh,
let me, let me finish. So I would like to, move to public comment if we could.
Jeff, can we hear from the fire and the police first? Because we have the reports that just got in a couple days ago. The real brief,
When you say hear from them, they've been entered into the record.
but I mean, I'd like to see if we could add them to our discussion because
They
got a lot of
provided
detail in
us
them.
they provided us written evidence and just point of fact.
Well, they would like things added to our regulation.
I don't really want to add fire code requirements to the zoning regulations.
Right. So could you
So-
explain? So the process is that the fire marshal reviews every building plan. And that's not part of the zoning regulation. It's a separate review. So that's the way we work and that's the way every place works. So we have that in the public record.
They wrote about this, under the safety analysis section, consider encouraging the review of available operational data in addition to crash history. Information such as traffic enforcement trends, recurring parking and loading issues, pedestrian complaints, and other documented traffic safety concerns can often provide valuable context. Crash data tells part of the story, but it doesn't always capture locations where proactive enforcement has helped prevent some serious issues from developing. You know, that saying, like, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. This is kind of speaks to that. So I think it's important that we
Director
incorporate
Batiste,
that.
Director Batiste, could you address how the fire and emergency services comments are addressed and or could staff address that, please? It's part of an application.
I mean, I think that the police department comments fairly supported what was within the traffic impact assessment and the traffic impact studies. I think for the fire department, I think they were expressing very specifically what's required within their fire code, but I don't necessarily want to incorporate their code requirements within our zoning regulations, because then we have to understand them when they change and then we have to update them. So, you know, I don't necessarily want our zoning regulation to become a catch-all for every single jurisdictional review that's mandated within the town. It would be if we adopted the septic requirements, which could be subject to change within our zoning regulations. And that's not really our jurisdictional authority.
But we could say,
I'm sorry. Let me ask, Director Batiste, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I generally agree with Director Harrigan. That, I mean, they're looking at it at a building permit phase anyway. So those regulations that are included in that, they themselves are imposing when they're looking at the application come in. And to your point, I wouldn't want to, if we're just to copy and paste that and put that in here, then we're going to have to keep on top of updating it when the fire code changes. So
How is that? If you're very
Go
specific
ahead.
in your language?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Why would you, if you're adding very specific language about crash data and if they're suggesting certain language be added, why would we not add it? Because we just are afraid their safety parameters are going to change? Like, we're not talking about septic systems here. We're talking
Are you talking
about
about the PD or what?
traffic
which one are we talking about?
enforcement.
PD1,
We're talking about, the only suggestions I would offer are, I would just like both of those topics to be commented on in terms of why we would not integrate that in writing.
I don't know what operational data means. It says, consider encouraging the review of available operational data in addition to crash history. Do you know what that means?
in that level of service,
I would think they're talking about the traffic data. I don't,
which is already in a traffic.
It's in the
study anyway.
operational data is traffic I would take it as traffic operations.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find anything that was unusual than what's already provided within a traffic
Right.
study. I mean, I will say that the police department in the past has not asked to look at our traffic studies. They look at the site plans.
Mhm.
I'm happy to send them the traffic study, but I don't know that their sergeant will review them in the same way as our engineering department and to the same level of.
Qualified to review traffic studies.
Right.
They're not qualified or experienced looking at traffic studies. Correct?
They're not the subject matter expert, no.
May I make a comment?
Oh, sure.
The regulation as drafted mentions fire about 5 times, fire department. Most of those simply say, if a public safety concern for access or circulation has been identified by fire or police in the pre-app code review process, which of course is not mandatory, the TIA or TIS shall address the resolution. That's great that they'll address the resolution, but it should be more of a positive requirement rather than a negative thing. In other words, what if they don't raise the issue because there's no code review? I think we should have a positive requirement that the traffic study must be passed by the fire and police and must indicate that it satisfies their requirements, because these fire requirements are mandatory, right? We don't have to list them. They will change. I agree. They will change. But
Commissioner Braun, I
it
do
should
not, I do
satisfy-
not manage the fire department or the police department. I am not allowed to add this significant amount of workflow to that department. It's not my ability to force work on another town department where they're
Well,
not
that's
the
a
subject
problem.
matter
Yep.
experts. I
Then-
can't do that, and neither can the TPZ commission.
Okay, well
So,
then,
so to specifically address the concern you raised.
access is a big issue in many
so
830Gs
specifically
especially.
address the question you raised, because we had this on 108 Biro, question about traffic turning radiuses. That's addressed in the plan review by the building department, correct?
Yes, the fire department looks at all of those things and they have a sign off before the building permit. And that's where they apply the codes that they have jurisdiction over. I can't add workflow to that department.
Right. So, any other questions
Well,
about?
hold on, how are we adding workflow to the engineering department?
No, you asked for the police and fire department to review each and every traffic impact study. And I cannot ask a different department to perform that work.
Well, okay, I'm trying to figure out
can
how we get the information, because we need the information.
perhaps
We need the
wrap up-
information.
Wrap up the comments on this, because I feel like we're continuing
I'm
to.
trying to ask, I'm gonna ask Director Batiste then, how can we get this information before us? So we know we're not approving something that would have problems. And with the fire department has very specific requirements, but the police are saying, please add something to here so that you look at not just crash, but traffic.
With all due respect, Commissioner Braun, I feel like this is becoming a
you a question.
seminar on code review, and I would encourage you to spend time at town hall to understand the review process, because this is not really the time or place to explain the review process which occurs for the information that comes before us. And so
I know what our review
we've got
process
a lot
is.
of other items on this agenda. I think you've raised the major points, and I would ask that we wrap this up so we can talk about something else.
But
And
I know that.
Hang
if
on.
it's
one
a-
note.
Hey, I'm
Yeah,
not, I'm not finished. Could I ask for final?
I don't need to be lectured
sorry.
about what I know and
I'm
don't know.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could I ask for final
We need
comments?
to be fully informed before we make a decision, and that's all we're trying to do here.
Could I ask for final comments, please? Go ahead.
So in the letter from John Cronin dated July 28th to Emmeline about the traffic impact studies, they cite in Connecticut, fire department access requirements are primarily found in the 2022 Connecticut State Fire Safety Code, chapter D1 -2 or .2, fire department access and water supply, which is based on the NFPA 1 with Connecticut amendments. Does it make sense to add that specifically to the traffic, to this document? Because we're citing, because he talks about the width of the roads, he talks about the turning radiuses changing, and so on and so forth. And this is very, very specific as it pertains to traffic.
No, because if that document changes without our knowledge, and there's a new standard that comes into play, and we don't have that new standard, we're in conflict with that fire marshal's review of a project.
So can we
If
say
we
or
don't update
later?
our regs to be in lock sync with that other, with that other department that has jurisdiction and authority over those aspects of a project.
So this is specific about vertical clearance, turning radius, the next code review, or the next code set for fire apparatus, access roads. These are like very specific. Can't we, just like we talked about, you know, the document going from the 11th to the 12th edition or later in an earlier document, can't we just add or later?
It's a step that is reviewed, every project goes through before it comes to us. The building department reviews all of those aspects. It's not part of the zoning, governs the general land use, not the design of the building.
That's correct.
This is about traffic. And
This
this
is
is about safety. And as the
And
density increases and the buildings
addressed-
get taller and denser, it's paramount that we take that into consideration in our
addressed
regulations.
the building code. It's addressed, and I would encourage you to go to town hall and educate yourself on the process by which projects are approved. It's technical, but it's addressed in the building code
And fire code.
and fire code, which is applied when you submit.
But the two frankly are also in lockstep with each other, the fire code and the building code.
Yep.
So when one updates, the other one updates.
Yep.
And again, if we reference, well, this is the zoning regulations.
Right.
We should only regulate zoning
Land use.
and land use.
We had multiple discussions on Biro and 15 years ago on Bronson about fire access.
Because
The Bronson Road
we
went all the way
rejected,
up and down
we rejected the analysis without prejudice, because we said that the application was incomplete. That's why we
We
rejected.
do look at it. We look at it because that's our job, to look
Right,
at it.
we look at to see whether the analysis has been done. It was
Right.
not done.
Right. So we should have it in our regulations that we need this information.
Not if
We
it's
should at
under
least
the
address-
fire marshal's purview.
No, it's like wetlands or stormwater. It is not our purview to administer the specifics. We have to see whether wetlands or stormwater have been reviewed by the qualified the qualified engineers. Traffic is no different. We don't-
Traffic affects the safety of the project that we're
Right.
doing the site plan for.
Question is, did a qualified engineer prepare it? If we question that, we can ask for a peer review. Our internal staff looks at the traffic impact study to say whether it's been prepared properly. Ideally, they will give us notes with comments, which we've never received before, but we should not specify the content of stormwater, wetlands, or traffic. These are subs or buildings. These are subspecialties that is not part of zoning. We have to say it's been reviewed by a qualified individual, yes or no.
I think
This-
I'd like for staff to come back and review the fire and the police. They just came in a few days ago and just determine which of these they agree to be in there. I think some of them we've already accommodated in our changes that we made in our red line.
I think you made a point. So any other summary, final comments?
I just want to make sure we note that they say many of the newer buildings have been challenging in terms of access for these vehicles. So I think it does need to be included here as a prerequisite to construction.
Are we doing, you want us to summarize what we said before the public speaks or
I
after the
think
public?
you already had a chance to summarize. So Is there anybody else who would like to provide some, I think you've already provided your separate comments, Mr. Capozzi.
I did.
Nothing to
Okay.
add.
Mr. Delgado?
I'd just like to hear the public speak.
Okay. All right, so can we move to public comment and we'll keep this, we're gonna keep this open, right? Because we haven't. we don't
Yeah.
have- Yeah. we're gonna
It's,
keep this
that's at
open.
the,
Yeah, we're gonna keep this
discretion.
open because we don't have a final document, but this has been a very constructive conversation. And I appreciate you accepting my process for trying to run the meeting. So I thank you very much for that. So can we go to public comment?
Yes, we have Celeste Davis.
Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Ms. Davis, Celeste, are you
Oh,
there?
no, he has to unmute me.
you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you to all of you that have taken the time and the energy to, one, create the document that you're looking at, and two, to analyze it. I know that this is not easy to do. I can speak to you on many of the subjects that you talked about tonight based on real life information. And the reason why you do need to make these, you have to create this document and it needs to be very specific. Using the word standards, you need to have the standards. We are beginning to live the Byro Street nightmare, and that property was mentioned several times tonight. The fire and safety, that needs to be a part of your document. You need to have the ability to be able to talk to experts. For almost 2 years, my husband and I went to the meetings. Many, many times it was brought up that the commission needed to seek using experts. Staff, Miss Harrigan, would either say, we can't afford it, it's not in my budget, and you were not allowed to use experts. You have to have that ability to get your own experts. Mr. Capozzi was very nice this evening when he was talking about the traffic experts who work for developers. There were many times when those traffic experts, who, according to Mr. Randolph, are professionals and are licensed, gave misinformation, wrong information. They didn't really even know the town of Fairfield. In our Byro Street case, they were supposed to come back with additional information. I don't believe that information was ever given back to us. He didn't even know how to say Byro Street. So you need to have all of this stuff put in writing to protect yourselves. And that's when I think you will have the documentation that you will need if and when you are sued. The commission staff is afraid of being sued. You should also have access to the town attorney. That has been denied many times. And I think some of it is because the town attorney is not versed in town planning and the town rules. But you need to really take this document, analyze it line by line, and come up with something that is going to make your commission much better. I appreciate everything that Ms. Monahan and Ms. Braun, they're looking out for the public. And I believe that that is a big part of your job. Because there are a lot of angry residents in Fairfield, angry about the traffic, angry about a lot of building and development that is taking place. And we're not here to deny things. You're not here to deny things, but we need to make sure that we're carefully planning any new additions. And we're just in the beginning stages of Byro Street. there's a lot of things that are happening there that don't look good to me. So we'll see what happens with that. I may be back in touch, calling the building department. I know the building department has already been called once because they started too early. That was not by me, that was by another neighbor. But we're in the beginning stages of the nightmare that we knew would happen because that was approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, and it's good to hear from you.
Commissioner Randolph, can I ask? If the commissioners could, whoever is admitting people and unmuting them as a co-host, please do not do that. Let me do that. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Did you all hear that?
Okay.
Okay. Any other, yeah, because before you guys were here, we got a very unpleasant bombed one night because we didn't manage it correctly, and I do not want that to happen again, so. Right, Commissioner Braun, that was not fun. Okay.
Next person up is, his name is Jason.
Jason, could you give us your name and address? We knew Miss Davis, so go ahead. Name and address, please.
Jason, are you there? Jason, hello?
All right, let's,
Going once, going twice. We'll mute you. We'll come back to you. Next person up is Linda Batchelder. Oh, Linda.
I'm Linda Batchelder, 175 Shoreham Village Drive, right near the Circle. And my experience of going to the hearings during the Circle, I was appalled that learned from the traffic studies that yield signed intersections are not counted or they are not graded. And this allowed the approval of the traffic around the Circle because the commission suggested that the traffic be rerouted through yield intersections in order to get a left-hand turn out of this development. So these regulations that we are referring to in code standards have omissions within them. They don't cover all cases. I think it is imperative that in such cases, there should be some way to ask for more information and not just approve a dangerous situation because a standard does not address yield signs. So the thought that traffic engineers are perfect because they're licensed and they have liability, I think is very foul thinking. So please retain some power to ask for extra information. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else?
Nope, that is it.
Okay, well, we'll keep this hearing open and staff will work diligently on.
I don't know what she was referring to on that topic. Frank, can you comment on that?
I think we can take that offline because it's a more complicated issue regarding the Circle Diner submission.
No, just about yields, where she was talking about yield signs.
Right, why don't we take that offline because it's not specific to what we're talking about here, so.
It isn't?
No, it was a project-specific issue. We're talking about a text amendment here, so. But I'm sure staff would be happy to take that offline.
We have the director here now. Can we ask him if he knows about the yield
I would
signs?
rather not discuss that. We've got other items on the agenda, which hopefully it's quarter to 10, and
Well, with all due respect, we had two people call in, one with a very valid concern about a recent denial that was then
that was
approved.
project. That was
And I
project.
understand it was an
Excuse me.
830G. I'm just asking for more information on it. That's all.
Okay, I suggest that you speak to staff, who will provide more information.
I'm gonna defer to Frank. And I'm gonna defer to Frank.
Well, he's right here now.
You would
I
have to
have to
look
look
at
at
it.
the context.
Can he
You would
answer
have to
that
look at
really quickly now so we don't take up the time
No,
from
we're
his?
not-
Because
we're
we
not
would have to look
going
at
to do
the
that.
traffic study. We can't
I
answer
have to go
this.
back and look at it. I can't answer it
Yeah,
Just
we're not
about the yield signs, are they not included in the
going to
traffic report?
discuss that now. Excuse me, Commissioner Braun. So we've got 15 minutes
Why
left.
not?
He's sitting right here.
They just explained it's,
wasn't-
it's technical, it's project specific. We'd be at this, both those cases are still open, right?
Yes,
There's
they're,
both-
they're
both
still
under
under.
I'm
appeal.
not asking about a case. I'm asking about a yield sign, how it works
The-
from
Okay,
his perspective.
Commissioner Braun, I'm sorry, let me tell you unequivocally, we are moving on, okay? Thank you. All right, so at the commission's discretion, okay. we're
Frank,
gonna
if
keep-
you could send us an email on that topic, it would be greatly
I'm
appreciated.
sorry, but please respect the commission. I know I'm just the acting chair, but please respect the commission. So we're keeping this open. The staff will come back with revisions from our miasma of suggestions here. So do we want to discuss 12 to 14 foot buildings? Do we have enough time to do that, or?
I think that's up to the discretion of the commission.
I think we should, you know, you don't have to stay.
Thank you.
You want to bring that up?
Is raising her hand.
I think you, Commissioner
I-
Mullins.
I'd like to make a motion to table this until the next meeting, given it's 9:47 and it's a very important topic.
I-
I think opening discussion on this for 13 minutes is irresponsible.
Why?
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
All right, let's put it to vote then. Who wants to, Commissioner Delgado, you're still here?
I'm here.
Okay, so should we table this? All those in favor of tabling it, raise your hand. Postponing it. All those who want to stay here and discuss this for 15 minutes, raise your hand.
We have an idea of how long.
Aye.
Okay, so it's four, yeah. Four-
I mean,
four-
I think we have presented this before. So it's just to reiterate, I think we ended up leaving this for a couple of meetings. But it's really just, not this one, the design commercial district, the design business district.
I don't believe we've discussed this before, and it's 9:48
I'm
and we have
sorry.
12
I'm
minutes.
sorry, you're not recognized. Can we please have Commissioner Harrigan? We voted to continue talking about this and we're the ones in the room. You guys are at home.
Yes, yes, sir.
Can
We're
we
not
ask-
home. I'm at the office and I'll be here until midnight.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So
we
these were just very simple corrections. I think as the commission remembers, we did look at these regulations back at the end of March, and we made more significant changes to these regulations per the requirements of PA 25-1. What we realized in looking at some of these applications, or some of these regulations, is that different applications have come in, and in conjunction with some of the architectural standards review, if you could just zoom in a little bit more, is that we had several architects ask for more flexibility with the first story height requirements. Originally, we had the first story required at 15 feet. Some architects have asked for flexibility and to provide a range for that, 12 to 15 feet within the first floor height limit. And then if you scroll down, John, there was inadvertently, we left off a footnote, go up one more. Left off a footnote for footnote 2 within that section, and we were just adding that. Sorry, back in, go back up, sorry.
Right here.
I think it's over in that line, I can't see it from this distance, but just if you scroll up. Sorry, go the other direction. And then secondarily, this was a regulation amendment that was also presented by the daycare center that had just come in regarding the building frontage width. Just to reiterate, we had initially, go back up. The highlighted section that's right there. So we had initially indicated a 70%, a goal of 70% of street frontage for the frontage of the parcel, with a maximum of 24 feet for a two-way driveway, as was discussed at the Goddard School application. You know, there is some circumstance where, you know, given our either the DOT or our town engineer or the director of public works that for better maneuverability out of a parcel, we should be a little bit more flexible at allowing the Director of Public Works or the town engineer to, for safety purposes, add an additional left-hand turn lane, which would widen that driveway beyond the 24-foot limit. The other thing that we realized that we had inadvertently added to the regulations is the measurement for a pedestrian plaza that's provided is from the curb instead of from the property line. Rights of way along our main commercial corridors, as well as even in our neighborhood design district areas, they vary greatly. And so where we really want to provide that measurement is from the property line, as is standard with most of our setback requirements, instead of from the curb line, which again, the public right-of-way can be highly variable. In addition to this, we do want to add that allowance for corner plazas, which provide a significant pedestrian amenity, in particular at corners. It helps with pedestrian staging and more room at crossings. So we did want to provide additional flexibility for those corner plazas as well to be deeper, in addition to different things like public art, for example, like we saw with the application at the corner of Commerce Drive and Kings Highway. And then we were eliminating the minimum setback requirement footnote, which is now in conflict with the 10-foot maximum setback that we adopted. And then if we just scroll down, there was one section of the regulation which was inadvertently split into two different line items that has been combined. And then lastly, the last section is, again, it refers to that footnote for a wider driveway where additional maneuverability is required out of that driveway for traffic safety purposes. And that's really the lion's share of the regulation changes that we're presenting. And this is just in conjunction with applications that we have seen come in, where we realized that that language was probably a little too strident in its requirements. So this is just to add flexibility for those very specific items within the design business district themselves.
That it?
That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Capozzi, any questions?
No, we reviewed this before, and this is just an amendment to regulation to provide, as Director Harrigan said, provide some flexibility based on the experience of fielding applications so far. And I think it's reasonable and warranted, and it looks good to me.
Commissioner Huntley?
Yeah, very similar to Commissioner Capozzi there. I feel the same way, and I feel like when we talked about it before, a lot of different points made.
Commissioner Braun?
Yeah, I have a question. I have a couple of questions. First of all, you're showing us the highlighted one that has yellow highlights from July 10th. There's also one that was posted on July 15th that's not highlighted. Is that just the clean version of the highlighted one? I'm trying to figure out what the exhibits are that we're talking about. And none of them have numbers.
It says clean version, yes.
Yeah, clean versus.
So the numbers are all missing also. They're like A, B, C, D, E. They're still not on there. We talked about that last time.
Did, yep.
So that should be added as well. Can you explain in footnote 1, where it says 1 foot of additional height for every 1 foot of vertical distance between the existing average grade and the base flood elevation, provided the building is not reduced? What does that get you? Is that unlimited? How high can that go?
No, this is something that we have not modified within our regulations. This is something that also applies to residential properties within the flood zone, and it also applies to commercial properties in the flood zone. The flood zone depth is determined by FEMA flood maps. So it's not an unlimited, you get to go as high as you want. It is the difference between the site's ambient grade as determined by a licensed land surveyor and the height of the flood zone as determined by the FEMA flood map, which is a regulatory document that we've adopted as part of our zoning regulations, plus the town's 1-foot freeboard, which is also adopted within our zoning regulations. So to give you an example, if you've got a site which is at elevation 8 and a flood zone which is at elevation 10, plus the town's 1-foot freeboard, that would be a 3-foot difference between that flood height, the ambient grade and the flood height distance. And that property owner would get a 1.5-foot height bonus because the only things that you're allowed to have below the base flood elevation is non-essential storage, parking, and access to the elevated level above. So for many buildings, this is not usable area below the base flood elevation that they can have for either their business or for a residential unit, for example. So it's a way in which to, allow them to kind of start at that flood height elevation level, similar to properties surrounding them.
So this is in any FEMA flood area, right?
That's
So
correct.
that could be anywhere in the coastal area, right?
Yes,
And the height, the maximum height in those commercial areas are 70 feet in the Commerce Drive commercial area, right?
we don't really have too many flood zones in the Commerce Drive area. This really only applies to certain limited areas along the Post Road, some of the commercial properties on Reef Road. So it's got very limited applicability within our commercial districts because only 4.5% of our land area is commercially zoned. This really is used quite widely and broadly within our residential flood zone districts.
I'm just trying to figure out how high could a building go when we add this on.
Our
So
flood,
right
our
now,
flood zones in our commercial districts are frankly not very deep.
explain that. So right now in the commercial zones across town, what's the height that we allow in the Commerce Drive area? It's 70 feet. But you're saying there's no flood zone in Commerce Drive?
Not where the buildings are located.
Where's the flood zone in Commerce Drive, I guess?
So that this only applied to let's see, what's the Genesis dealership at 26 Commerce Drive. So the closer you get to Ash Creek, we do have some area closer to the Rooster River where it meets Ash Creek, where that is, there's some flood zone areas on that easterly portion of Commerce Drive. And in that district right now, the Commerce Drive is limited to 40 feet in height.
I
for
thought
those
Commerce Drive
access-
was 70 feet.
Only if you apply a transit-oriented development project.
But TOD, we haven't reached to that regulation yet, but the TOD project would have to be in the Commerce Drive area, right?
That's correct.
And the TOD project would have to satisfy TOD requirements, but they could be 70 feet tall.
Yes.
So if you have one that's in the coastal area, you're saying that you could add how much?
It depends on what the grade of the property is.
1 foot of
and the-
additional height for every 1 foot of vertical distance between, so
And the flood
if
zone that
Genesis
it's
was-
located in.
Yeah, so Genesis has already been redeveloped, but if they wanted to, they could go, how high could they go based on this?
Sorry, I was looking at something else. I haven't restarted.
Well,
For
for
about two and a
that-
half minutes.
for that particular property, it's,
10 o'clock.
they didn't exercise that. They
No,
didn't
but-
exercise that allowance. They were well below the height limit.
I'm not talking about a specific, I'm talking about our regulations allow. So our regulations allow if you're in Commerce Drive area and you qualify for TOD for your project and you're in the coastal flood zone, you could build 70 feet plus 1 foot for every foot of vertical distance between the existing average grade and the base flood elevation. So what does that get you?
It depends on the property. So not every property has the same flood depth. Every property has different topography. So the starting point and the difference between the the required design height for the flood zone, plus the town's 1-foot freeboard is all gonna be different. So at that Commerce Drive site at 26 Commerce Drive, that was, I think, a 2.5-foot deep flood zone. So they would only get a 1.5-foot flood height bonus if they chose to exercise it, which they did not on that parcel.
So they could get up to almost 72 feet. And then the section about the amenities,
One
Could you
minute, Commissioner
explain-
Braun. 1 minute, Commissioner Braun.
you're restricting me to 1 minute? I thought I had 5
You've been
minutes.
asking for, you've been talking for 4 minutes, and we'd like to give other people, it's late.
Okay,
We'd like to give other people a chance to ask questions.
okay.
Before we
I'll
adjourn.
reserve it. I'll reserve, I'll
Commissioner Delgado, you're next.
No questions, just comments. I'm looking forward to adopting these regulations. I feel like it's been rather iterative. There's been a lot of changes to try to address conditions that have, presented themselves in applications and scenarios that hadn't, been originally considered. So it's been a long time coming, and I'm just really excited to move on with these changes.
Thanks. Commissioner Monahan, you're next.
First, I'd like to know how it's been a long time coming. What applications have we turned down based on not adopting these? That's my first question. Can you speak to that, Commissioner Delgado?
You have to ask.
Through you,
I'm sorry, you have
Commissioner.
to ask through
to-
Chair. I would direct
Through
this.
you, Chair, directed to
direct-
Commissioner
direct-
Delgado.
I would direct this to Director Harrigan. So-
No, I'm directing it to Commissioner
So you're not
Delgado. He
permitted
made
to
his
ask,
statement.
you're not permitted to ask other commissioners questions during the proceedings. You've been told this many times before. It's not how it works. So you can ask Director Harrigan. So
You
please,
asked me questions.
I-
It's
Could-
past 10
I can
o'clock.
clarify. For one, I didn't say we denied any applications. I'm saying that there have been scenarios brought to staff's attention and they've sought to make changes that address any of these specific situations, i.e. the 12 to 15 foot height, as opposed to what was originally there. So I didn't say we denied any applications to this. And when I say it's a long time coming, it's because it's been on numerous agendas, right? Like we've been talking about this specific item for maybe months at this point.
How are you privy to
I'm sorry,
applications that
you're-
are coming in
I'm
on
sorry,
this
you're not-
topic that
you're
we are not?
I'm sorry, you're out of order. You're not permitted to have this. This is not a workshop. So you can ask questions about process to Director Harrigan, okay?
This is a planning session.
Please direct questions. We're still working in an
Okay.
orderly fashion.
Through you, Commissioner, to Ms. Harrigan. How is Commissioner Delgado aware of applications coming before the commission to you without the rest of the commission being aware of those applications?
Mischaracterization of anything I said.
That's what you just stated.
No, it's not, and you're out of
Yeah,
line.
Yeah, stop.
Well, I
Sorry,
mean, I
sorry.
think,
Go
you
back and
had
look at the
the,
video.
you had the Southport daycare that specifically submitted a portion of what's within this regulation change at the very last meeting. This had come up as part of the discussion when we originally looked at these regulations in regards to one of the other applications. So I think, listen, I think we move forward in making these revisions to our regulations in good faith. I will tell you, as a long-term planning practitioner, you really test drive your regulations when you have different applications that are submitted before you. And then sometimes you realize you have to make a slight modification. So I think that's what this is here, is not a wholesale significant change. It's really trying to move forward with good faith regulations that just require a slight tweak.
So can we please speak to?
Commissioner Zablek, I think it's your.
I'm still speaking. I have 5 minutes.
Right.
On point 6.5.3, additional setback, we've stricken Any building or other structure or portion thereof exceeding the height of 30 feet shall be set back 1 foot in addition to the applicable minimal setback requirement for each 3 feet or fraction thereof by which such building or other structure or portion thereof exceeds 30 feet in height. Please explain, Commissioner Harrigan, the thinking behind striking that and the ramifications currently on any applications that are pending or that have become before us.
So if we are looking at a 12 to 15-foot first floor, and then, a second floor that's probably going to be 10 feet, and then a floor above that, that's going to be an additional 10 feet, it doesn't align with what we anticipate for story height. It also doesn't address that within the neighborhood design district, we have buildings that are, by and large, a lot shorter than that. And, that top story might not hit at exactly that 30-foot level. So I think what makes sense, and it's been the long-term, this even came up within the POCD conversation, for example, that most people are fairly comfortable with a 3-story building, but it's really the 4th story where they feel like, oh, that gets a bit tall. And so removing that more complicated regulation, which I think even when you read it yourself, it's not that clear cut and as clear a standard as we'd like within our regulations. To look at a setback for the 4th floor is, I think, a cleaner way to deal with, I think, some of the design issues I think that the community has with seeing a 4-story building.
I think we should look to the architectural design standards and some of the language about the 10% before we adopt this, because there are ramifications of this on that particular topic. Also, when we use the words or similar architectural projections, can we be very specific in terms of any proposed 4th story shall be set back an additional 4 feet along the street line, excluding emergency egress, chair towers, chimneys, balconies, open porches, pergolas, bay windows, or similar architectural projections. So is that like a rooftop deck that someone can build? Is that where this is going in terms of this kind of excluding architectural projections? So what's the, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so within our mechanical equipment section, we do have allowances for, and this is to meet like building code requirements, for example.
The
We do have
10%, right?
allowance, pardon?
The 10%?
Yeah, we do have
Numbers?
allowances, for example, for projections for like elevator towers and
Right.
stair towers that are required by the building code, depending on what the building's being used for and the design of the structure. So we do have to allow for some level of rooftop projections.
It's like 10%, but it can't be visible from the street. Is that right?
Yeah, usually they're set back quite a bit, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of the design goal that we're trying to achieve. But I do think that, as we are looking at a future where, we're looking probably we will see more folks add residential units to buildings that are more vertical, that realistically, we want to have an amenity space that's an open space for tenants. And sometimes that is going to be a rooftop area where I think as long as it's not an
You
added.
said we, right? You said we will want this?
No, we will see this.
Oh,
Well,
I
but
think you just said we will want to see this.
Well, I think we want building amenities for residents, right? We want people to have access to light and air and spaces outside, right? I think that's an admirable goal if we're providing multifamily within Fairfield. I think that provides a higher quality of life for its residents. I think that's something that we should look to achieve. Someplace where they can, sit outside on a patio. And if it's a building where we have parking requirements and they need to satisfy that parking requirement at grade, that may be the only space and opportunity for an outdoor common space for residents. So I think that is something that we should
So if
be
there's no
open to.
backyard and they're building straight up 52 feet and now they want to add a rooftop deck because there's no backyard and no parking spot, and we're supposed to celebrate that and encourage it. So I'm looking at the DiNardo letter that was written on March 3rd. Post subject 1619 Post Road Mixed Use Development.
Back and forth, so I haven't
With
really.
regard to the proposed regulation changes being considered, I believe it would be highly desirable amenity for any project in town will consider adding adequate building height to incorporate a fifth floor. This could be used for penthouses or a lower density than other floors, and or a rooftop and or recreation room for all residents to enjoy, including seating areas, plantings, overlooking the heart of downtown Fairfield, and in some cases, the
but
Long Island Sound.
I'm not sure.
5 floors.
I'm looking at the comments here section, and I'm
Yes.
not sure if that's in the comment section for this.
I'm
For the-
just saying that this particular exception, I think, is going to be looked at to be one of the reasons why we're pushing for a rooftop amenity. And I think that that is a bigger discussion that needs to be had on this topic.
I don't see that.
It wasn't a prior one, I'll have to add.
Okay, all right.
But again, I think that's not the staff recommended change. I think that's a comment by the public where, you know, frankly, he's saying, hey, commission, would you entertain a fifth floor? And I think that we advised him that it wasn't likely, but we told him he could submit, you know, hey, anybody can submit public comment, right? So I did strongly advise him that I didn't think it would go anywhere, but he's a member of the public. He can submit his comments, right? So
Didn't we remove a floor, Director Harrigan?
we did. We used to have 5 stories, 50 feet within the center design district, but we lowered that to 4 stories. Again, based on prior conversations by prior commissions, that they really felt more comfortable with 4 stories instead of the 5. And with the understanding that we really didn't want to go that much further above 50 feet. So we went to 52 feet as the 52 feet is the height limit, but with 4 stories only.
And why did we go to
Wait,
52 feet?
Let's.
No, I want to have that on the record. Why did we go to 52 feet?
Because we wanted a taller ground floor.
Right.
When-
So
Now
I'm
we're
sorry.
reducing the ground
I'm
floor.
sorry. So Commissioner Monahan, I think we've allotted you a good amount of time. Commissioner Zablak, did you have any comments?
Yeah, my comment is to let Commissioner Monahan finish whatever she wanted to say.
So you yield your time?
I've actually agreed with everything she said, and you know, listen, first of all, you know, I'm a newer commissioner here, and I really appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone's point of view, and it's quite it's quite different for me to actually say I've got this question, that question. By the way, it's after 10 o'clock, and I am looking at this and I'm thinking quality of life as to what Director Harrigan said. So looking for higher quality of life, her own words. What higher quality of life are we have here? What is all of this accomplishing? Nothing. Nothing is taking away any regulation that we could possibly have. And I'd like Commissioner Monahan to please speak up a little bit. She's a lot more articulate than I am because I'm so new, so I defer.
I think the higher density, the more density, the larger footprint, the taller buildings, the lack of parking is precisely what people are against in this town. And I think that, you know, for us to be developing, you know, when we hear, oh, developers have come to us and we've had to reject, you know, we've had to change, we've had to say no, that's okay. It's okay to say no. We don't have to constantly be changing our regulations to change what a developer wants.
We're talking about the design business regulation,
Yes.
strict revisions. And I think your comments are of a general nature. Is there anything specific
Yeah.
about this regulation?
What
that-
are similar architectural projections cited in A, the new A, under 6.5.3 additional setback specifically?
Okay, I think that's a good question that maybe we could have some additional clarification on. Did you have any other specific comments on this? Because it is late and I've got a couple of comments. I'll be brief and then we'll keep this open.
I think we should remove the line that says lot frontage areas not meeting the building frontage width criteria shall meet the requirements in the architectural design standards, section 17. Until they're adopted, it should be removed.
Well, we,
What is that? Could you point? to which-
I noticed them together so we
Under
could discuss
3.
them together, but we never have enough time.
Yeah, we don't have, the reason
Under
I'm trying to be a
3.
little bit stricter, the reason I'm trying to be a little stricter about time is because we don't get through very much and we're here at 10:15. So I'd like to just make a couple of comments and I'll be
I'm
very.
just saying, we're citing,
Can I-
we're citing sections in architectural design standards in something that we're reviewing now before we've reviewed those standards. So we should be reviewing those standards first and then be looking at this. But there's a reason we're doing
I
it
would-
this way, and I don't know why. I haven't put my finger on it yet, so I'm trying to figure that out.
Doing this because one applicant wants it, isn't that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Braun, you're out of order. So.
I was
The
promised I
question-
could talk
You're out of
about it.
order, Commissioner Braun. The question was raised about whether it should be cited in both, and we're working on these concurrently. Neither of them has passed. It's a reasonable question. The explanation is we're working on these concurrently. So that's the answer, but if you'd like a better explanation, please speak to Director Harrigan. So I've got a couple of minor comments and then I will move to adjourn and we're going to keep this open, but I think the 1 foot step back on height, I strongly support that because it does create some unintended consequences. The 4th floor setback is a cleaner interpretation. Otherwise you get buildings that are angled, okay? And back to my New York City experience, that's why you see this building step back, but you get a larger building. So this was well intended, but it's only really applicable for skyscrapers, which we don't have. The 12 to 15 feet was in the previous presentation on this on July 14th. There was some accusation made that there's insider information, which is spurious, okay? On the 14th, it was presented by the staff that we've been getting feedback from architects that the specific height provides inflexibility. We're trying to allow them to go
Just-
lower. I'm not
And
done.
wait, just Commissioner Monahan, asked which architects had provided the
Yes.
feedback and Director Harrigan gave the
Yes.
answer.
And so the suggestion here is not to go any higher, it's to give the flexibility to go lower. Just to be clear, which gives some flexibility in buildings, which makes sense, okay? So the accusation that there's some nefarious, undisclosed information, I'm just reminding the commission that this was discussed on the 14th.
You're
That's
saying
all.
there's something in the next regulation that talks about 10%, and it's not very specific. So I'm just saying the order of operations here to have one and then, potentially close the public hearing on it without discussing the ramification of
We're not
that, I
closing
guess,
public,
is
we're not
backwards.
closing public hearing on this. So I think your point's made, but I would like to keep this open. I'm not going to ask for public comment, make public comment next time, and it's 10, almost 10:20.
Questions for next time? Maybe
Yes,
I'll
of
put-
course. It's open. You can have questions next time.
Thank
All right,
you.
but I would ask the commission, please, to be more disciplined with your questions, to be more disciplined because we're getting really bogged down. This is a very minor change. And I think that our previous conversation on traffic impact studies was a much deeper conversation, required a lot more thought, but this is a relatively minor thing. And let's try to be disciplined about preparing for the meetings and asking questions so we can not get bogged down. That's just my request.
We were very, very prepared for this meeting. I would argue the most prepared for this meeting. So I resent that. But I do agree, everyone should be prepared with their questions and do their analysis in advance.
I appreciate it. All right, anybody move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
all right, so meeting adjourned.